think we're talking enough that we should put it in a podcast again. And then you got the camera, and here we are.
We were some fresh-faced boys.
Yes.
And
You didn't
I
have
had
the
more
curls.
hair on my beard and none of it on my head.
It felt like an adventure.
I can hear the music playing in my head.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of The X Button. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is the recently trimmed...
Paul, hey everybody. How's it going?
You finally lost the curls.
I've got a few up here. It's just my light won't allow me to see it yet.
Uh-huh.
You can see them still there. They're just significantly subdued because it's hot out here and I ain't got time for all that. So
I feel you.
I finally I left it tousled up and trimmed as much as I could, and it feels great to have the wind hitting my ears and back of my head again.
Yeah, I feel that. I've been like debating of whether when I'm gonna go get my haircut because the rains have stopped for a bit, so now it's
Really?
back to hot.
Well, they came to me then because
Yeah.
it's been raining like every day this week.
That's nice. Despite the calamity of sometimes getting floods with the rain, I like rain because it refreshes everything. And I always like to feel fresh. I like to feel cool. I don't like the hot. So now that the rains have mostly dissipated from like normal day, it sometimes rains at like 1 a.m., but you're asleep at that point, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
During the day, it's like so darn warm in these tropical countries that I just don't like, especially me that I'm a hairy dude. I get warmer much quicker, so I can't wait to like trim this thing off. I haven't had a haircut I think since February, so yeah, it's been a while, and because it's like you can't see it in my video, but it's like I'm slowly growing a mullet. Like
It's funny because from here it always looks like you've got this perfectly trimmed and combed
because of the gel.
short hair.
You should look my hair if I don't have any gel in.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I always manage to kind of like keep it looking as clean as possible as you can make magic with gel. But other than that, it's like when I wake up, it's like my hair is just a complete mess. so but I don't like presenting myself that way, at least. But hopefully a little haircut coming soon. But enough about talking about trimmings and haircuts, because this is the X Button Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts now every Thursday from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing, available in the YouTube channel Escape Media, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-media. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. We are switching out to Thursdays because the last 3-4 weeks we have been recording on Wednesdays and trying to like post late in that same day. That then we were just like, should we just move it to Wednesdays now and just post on Thursdays? And I think it's gonna work out that way. So enough preamble, Paul. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that you've played about. So tell me, hit me.
Okay, so several are carried over from last week. A few like Mega Man X that I played like one extra level of, and I'm just really glad that games have come so far since then, because it is a
Because you suck?
frustrating game, and I do suck somewhat, and sometimes I don't understand how they expect me to get past certain enemies without getting hit. And it's a little frustrating sometimes. Yeah,
you gotta get good.
Seems to be. Besides that, I continued and finished Mark of the Ninja Remastered. I think I mentioned how short it was. It ended up being a lot longer than I thought it was.
Yeah,
in that first segment.
I don't understand. Why were you saying that it was so short? I thought you were finishing
It's
it
still
last
pretty
week.
short. I was finishing it. The thing is, they build you up after like 2 missions, or okay, maybe more like 5 or 6 missions. So I was like, okay, well, this is like a short indie game, I guess, because they're building it up to this finale, take out this corrupt business guy, and I was like,
but you can see how many levels there are, or because how do you know it was short? I'm so confused.
it just felt like it because they were already building me up to like this final villain guy, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we kill the final villain guy, we finish it up, and then like you get betrayed, and then that's the second half of the game. And it was still pretty short. I mean, I beat it in a couple extra sittings, but alongside playing a bunch of other stuff. So it was fun. It was short, and now I can replay it if I choose to.
Hmm.
But it was enjoyable. I really love the 2D art style because it aged really well.
Hmm.
And I'm sure the
It's 10 years
remastered
old.
side of it helps. But yeah, like, I mean, I wouldn't know that it was a 360 game at all unless you told me. But yeah, so I played that, continued playing Anno Mutation. I'm trying to focus on that one a little bit just to enjoy the 2D combat,
Hmm.
and I'm getting a better feel for it. Also finished Last of Us 2,
Yeah.
just trucking along. That one was a lot of highs and lows, and
Because you're playing on Grounded, and we were having that
yeah,
behind the scenes conversation about the artistic intent of the choices made.
yeah, which helped me kind of gather some thoughts of my own and understand a few things about the more difficult sides of living in the gray area of
Mhm.
life rather than needing things to be white or black.
And
It was kind of interesting.
and also the plain straight hypocrisy of you not wanting to like be playing like this dire like cynical stuff, yet that's always the thing that you're playing when there's like the more cheer stuff that you don't touch. Remember that?
Well, it depends on what it is, really. But yes, there's a certain hypocrisy of me wanting to get into darker things and then getting frustrated at it because part of me is like, I want to understand it. And I think that's one reason why it's like the final form of art sometimes for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And I keep throwing myself out of trying to understand it. And I think part of me needs to either understand that I'm never going to be that kind of person,
Mhm.
or it's going to help me build complexity in some of my opinions of things. So
Mhm.
if anybody's listening for a while, you know that I'm a very simple person full of black and white morality.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I played a lot of that, and then I jumped into a string of shooters that
Mhm.
part of me just wanted to replay something that I could turn my brain off after all of the chaos that I've been dealing with.
Uh-huh.
And so I started with Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, and I was playing through that on just like recruit, just flooding through with a shotgun, opening
Mhm.
up on all of the faceless enemies just for the fun of it. And then I was like, this is fun. You know, I haven't played Call of Duty Cold War's single player in a while. Let me see
Mhm.
how that process works. So I at first was going to download the PS5 version, which
Uh-huh.
is 177 gigabytes right
Yep.
now. And I said, oh, so I just do not have the storage space for that. So I downloaded the PS4 version instead,
Mhm.
which I remembered was also a completely separate version. So I'm starting the whole campaign from the start with no
Mhm.
trophies,
Yeah.
which is
and
so
and,
weird
and,
that
and
the
smudge
trophies are.
and smudge your visuals also. I
Yeah,
once
but
did that.
as we've mentioned, I barely noticed the difference. The only thing is the loading times are way longer.
Mhm.
But besides that, it looks great. It feels great to play, and it was really fun because I started off on my TV screen, and when I sent you that group chat where I was like, I adore the spectacle of Call of Duty
Mhm.
stories, was right after I finished the airplane
That you
mission.
that
Was
you
just
drive the RC car. They have to
yes.
drive the RC car all the way to the plane.
Yeah, I remember when that got revealed, that was the mission that they showed us at
Mhm.
first. And man, it just is so good to just make it feels like I'm at a Universal Studios ride.
Mhm.
And even though I know it's like it's heavily curated and very specific and it's not like true gameplay, but in
Mhm.
the end I don't even care because it looks and it feels so fun that I don't even mind that it's like on the rails sometimes. But yeah, so I love that spectacle, and I was playing a lot of that, and then I decided to go back into Destiny 2 because for a second, a brief glorious second, I thought that the solstice thing was happening this week, and it turns
Mhm.
out it's next week.
Mhm.
So I was trying to build up some season pass ranks and whatnot, and playing that and comparing the shooting
Yeah. Yeah.
mechanics.
What level are you in the season pass?
Uh, I was like 55 at first, and then I jumped up to like 70
I
something.
I
So
reached level 100 2 weeks ago.
nice.
Yeah.
I just stopped playing because it wasn't really that fun after a while, but I needed to play through all the Severance missions still, so I
Mhm.
just started bursting through all those, and now I'm on stuck on one that's really vague, where it's like visit the pyramid under the depths of the moon, and I was like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's like where you the end of Shadowkeep.
Okay, well, they need to be more specific because they were giving me no markers, and I'm like, is that in this area?
Do you mark the thing? Because when you mark it
I
and then
did.
pull the ghost, it should give you the triangle.
I pulled it up and I was trying to figure it out because obviously the Leviathan and the moon are like separate things,
Mhm.
but technically on the moon. So
Yeah, if you were in the Leviathan, it wasn't gonna give you the thing. You had to go to the moon.
So I was just really lost and I was doing other stuff instead. But anyway, so that was fun, and then I got bored again. I'm just waiting for Destiny 2 to give me more things to play, and then I played something else. But first, do you want to talk about the other things before we jump into our main?
Yeah, like I mentioned last week, I only had Resident Evil 3 left from that replay of the PS5 version that I had installed. So I actually went and did 4 playthroughs of RE2, like AB, Leon, Claire, and then I flipped it to Claire A, Leon B, and I tell you, it's like it is a complete waste of time doing 4 playthroughs of that. It diminishes my opinion of them attempting 4 different routes at all, because it's just half-assed. It's like I thought, okay, maybe if I do Claire A and Leon B, I'm gonna get maybe something a little different, because this doesn't make sense. But they would have all of this and just be almost the same, with the only exception of the different cutscene specific developments from each character, because you still need to play both Leon and Claire to understand the full story. You cannot just do Leon. That's just half of it. In fact, the most important story is Claire's.
Really?
Actually, yeah.
I thought you said that they kind of contradicted each other.
No, that's the thing. Like, if you just take them at base of what they show, like the more important story is Claire's, because of what it does to the virus. Like, anything with Leon is just his relationship with Ada, and getting the vial. That's why, like, you have to play both. The thing is that where it disappoints is when you do a playthrough and then move to the B playthrough, and how much it repeats gameplay. And the only thing that really changes are cutscenes at the end, or more like the final sections of what the final boss is for each one. But doing a Claire A and Leon B is like didn't change anything at all, other than finding some different notes. Because when you're playing the B route, you find notes from the other character that tells you, "Hey, get out of here! Don't worry about me. Just I'm moving ahead. Just get away from this." That's the only thing that changes from doing all these different playthroughs.
What does it change for like the cutscenes and stuff for like Claire A? Does that mean that she's
Claire?
The one
That's the thing. Claire B and Claire A are literally the same as Leon A and Leon B. The only thing is that the B routes are harder. They're much harder. Even if you're playing in a system mode, but story wise, they're like carbon copies. They're literal carbon copies.
Weird. And okay, so it's like Claire still goes through all of her own stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like Claire in Leon's story.
No, and that's the thing. Like, it's framed in a way like if you're following the character from the A route, but the things that you actually do in gameplay don't make sense if you're following the route. Yeah. So I wanted to see like if there could be like any different story doing it different, or if something else would unlock if I did the other route. No, nothing. So only do one A. You only have to do one route A and then one route B, and you've pretty much seen the whole game. Oh. And that's really unfortunate, knowing how different it was back on PS1. So I still enjoy it because I enjoy that game so much, and it's so quick. Once you know what to do, you can. My final run on that game was 3 hours. So I was like, yeah,
it moves really quick once you understand how things work.
Yes, and understand how to like cheese the Mr. X. Because Mr. X, initially, when you don't know anything and you have that tension of him pursuing you, it's like that adds extra time because you're afraid to keep exploring. But once you know what can stun him, or how to cheese him trying to punch, or letting him punch you, to then just book it, and knowing that there's some rooms that he won't enter and there will be some that he will, and it makes it more manageable. Because initially, to me, like, I loved and hated when he came in, because I am very meticulous when it comes to survival horror games. I like scrounging every corner, seeing if I can find anything, because I feel that's the pace that it presents itself at. And then when he is there, it's like you have to accelerate. And but it helps you like learn the level very well, and that's what I really like about RE2, especially when you're in the police station, you learn everything to the back of your hand. You don't even need the map because everything's like so well designed. You know, okay, if I go through here, if I go up the stairs, I'm gonna get to these other 2 rooms that's gonna have this item and this door that I can unlock with this thing. And that to me is like the thing that I love about 2 that I feel 3 misses a little bit, because 3 is a little bit more broad because you're all over the city, you go to different labs, it's more action packed. I will say this is RE3 is that weird sequel that I feel like when you look at it objectively, visually and in gameplay, it's better than 2, but the game is not as good as 2. Like playing 3 and having the dodge button, godsend. You don't know how much you miss that dodge button until you go back to RE2, and how cool it is that you just press the R1 button or RB if you're playing on Xbox to do that quick dodge if you have a zombie that grabs you. Because the thing is that when a zombie goes for you, 99% of the time they'll grab you and bite you. In RE3 you can at least dodge. And I'll say I like that there's more kinds of enemies in 3 also, because in 2 is the zombies and the mutated stuff that you find in the sewers that has the eye and the shoulder. That's basically another version.
But the lickers.
And also the lickers, yeah. But 3 also has those, the zombies and the lickers, and also has the frogs. It has the giant spiders. Also, it has.
Oh gosh, I forgot about the spider things.
That stick that thing.
That's a very disturbing thing that had a very specific feel to it. But I wanted to actually mention one tiny quality of life thing that I loved about Resident Evil games is the fact that when you've picked all of the items in a room, the color
it marks
of the
them
room changes.
Yes, and it marks them also if you don't pick them.
Yeah, and it's so wonderful to know, like, for sure, okay, I've gotten everything, I can focus on other stuff.
Yeah, I can move away from here.
In everything, I mean, one of the best things that I loved about my recent Last of Us 2 playthrough is changing the accessibility option to be able to ping items, because everything looks the same as everything else that looks like an item. So to know what I can actually pick up is really nice. Yeah.
And considering a lot of that game is you entering a room and going to every corner, pressing triangle to see what opens, it's like that helps speed up the process.
Very much so. It's so like life-giving, especially on a game that bloated, as opposed to something like Resident Evil where it's like you're dashing through, you're moving, you're dealing with the tension, you've usually got a zombie or 2 or Mr. X on your tail. I need to know where to grab things and to keep moving, and also that there's only like so many things that resources wise you really need. There's ammo and there's health and there's puzzle items, and
in 3 you don't know how much you need a knife, like when they give you, because the knife on 3 is infinite. It's part of your inventory. You can just pull it and start stabbing stuff. And that's what you can do to break some of the boxes that you see that has hopefully sometimes ammo or healing items. In 2, the knives you get are like degradable.
Right.
Yes.
They're like the shivs from Last of Us, actually.
Yeah. So it's funny seeing like the ways that those 2 games are so similar and the ways that they differ. Another thing that I feel Resident Evil 3 also does well is the interplay between when you play with the 2 different characters. It makes more sense than like when you switch to a different character and here that extra character having its own scenario, its own things that you do, and then switch back to the other character as you complete the story. And it just made me feel like they did the route A and B of RE2 because they wanted to kind of like pay homage to the fact that's how the structure of RE2 was. But I feel the best way they could have done that game is that you still pick who you want to pick like at the beginning, and then have the other character kind of intersplice depending, because obviously when you, depending on who you choose, you find your other character at another side of a different door. In the B route, someone's outside. The person that you picked got to the station first. I would have kept that, but I would have liked to see more of seeing both characters be on their own without having to repeat the same puzzles, the same boss fights, because it just doesn't make sense. Especially in the context of another character is maybe pursuing the other one. It's better to have them on both separate routes, at least for the majority of time, and then having them intersect, like what happens with Jill in Resident Evil 3 when she gets infected. by the nemesis, and then she gets knocked out for a little bit, and then you play as Carlos again in that whole
I do
hospital.
appreciate being able to go through parts of even the Resident Evil 2, I think, where you just have this fully automatic rifle and you just trivialize everything that you suffered
Yeah,
through.
RE2 doesn't have an automatic rifle. The only one that has
No.
that is Claire. She has a submachine gun.
Which is nice, but then you burn through ammo so quickly.
Yeah, it's not that effective, especially because zombies in that game can take like 20 bullets to the head and they're still come up. You'll need a shotgun at least or an explosion to kill them.
I noticed also that there's not the infinite ammo style that they added in like obviously Village in 7, where it's like you had these credits that you could use on infinite ammo guns.
There's none in 7. There's no infinite.
There's not. Okay.
Yeah, it's on 4. In Resident Evil 4 and 5 is
I know
there's
there
infinite.
was 4, 5, probably 6 if I had to guess.
6
Really? Okay. Why do they keep like taking it out randomly? Because
they were
experimentally
weird.
Staple of the series by now. That when I went back to 2 and I was like, wait a minute, there is no infinite ammo in this game.
Yeah, but the thing is that 2 deliberately doesn't do that because it's the only Resident Evil game where you don't feel the power fantasy at all.
Yeah,
Like,
I understand it. I was just hoping that like going back through, I could just kind of like, can I get 1 amp gun with a little infinite ammo, please?
But that's kind of why I said that. I feel it, despite the things that Resident Evil 3 improves, I feel Resident Evil 2 is still the better game because that one is straight pure survival horror. Even though you can like eventually near the end have so many weapons at the end, even then it's still a very small arsenal. And then zombies are just as scary from moment 1 as they're at the end. They can still screw you.
Yeah. I do appreciate that actually. In hindsight.
3 because has a more actiony slant.
Yeah.
You can feel a little bit more overpowered near the end because there you do have a machine gun. You can like upgrade your shotgun to be real strong, and having the grenade launchers. Like the RE2 separates specific weaponry depending on what character you get. With Jill, you can have all the weapons that you may need. Like at least with her, you get your handgun. You can get a Desert Eagle. You can get the assault rifle. You can get a shotgun all together. And in the grenade launcher, exactly. So obviously not at the same time because you have limited space in your inventory, but it's something that you can equip her.
Switch over to another one. It's really nice. So I think like because they're setting out to do very specific things, I never think that 3 failed at that. The only thing that I think 3 suffered with is the fact that it offered or asked for $60 for that experience. Yeah,
and that's probably because the way they justified it was that we're giving you this and we're giving you Project Resistance, and Project Resistance sucks.
Yeah,
so
which was the multiplayer mode for anybody wondering. It was a callback to the 2010s cheap multiplayer tacked onto a game. I'll never forgive Batman Arkham Origins for trying that.
Yes.
Of all games.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a side
But then eventually there, and that multiplayer came after Gotham City Imposters, which was actually a multiplayer only thing that was actually good.
Yeah, that was a totally separate thing.
Yeah, and the one from Arkham Origins sucked. But yeah, Resident Evil 3 is like, it's so well made, but it was badly priced at launch. But at the prices it goes for now, most of the time, and
especially since they're bundled together.
Yeah, now they bundle them together for like $40. I feel $40 is like perfect for both of them.
Worth it, even not on sale. If you
Raccoon City Collection, and this should have been like DLC initially, but it's like the thing is that I can see why Capcom would want to charge full price because you can't say that. Well, it's like objectively speaking, them giving you a multiplayer is still like it's still giving you a single player and a multiplayer, and the quality you see on screen. It's like the RE engine is just so.
I'll acknowledge that.
Yeah, it's like it's so well made. It's like that's the thing. Like Resident Evil 3, it's such a well made game still, despite it not maybe feeling as good as RE2 overall. But it's like I still had a great time playing through it, and again, it just makes me excited to go to 4, seeing that we know the quality of life they're hitting right now with this one. Now when they get to the masterpiece, and now when they get to the masterpiece, how they're gonna do it, that makes me excited. But then after I finished RE3, I looked at my calendar and I was like, 2 years ago around this time, I did a full playthrough, replay of the Uncharted series after I had just finished Last of Us Part 2, and I feel I'm due for another one, especially because the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection came out, and I always had that hang up that I can't get over, that the best way for me to enjoy Uncharted 4 is like having a playthrough of the first 3 immediately before to get like the maximum best experience possible. So I was like, I kind of want to play Uncharted 4 again, so I'm gonna do this again and play through the Nathan Drake collection on this time on PS5. Despite the Nathan Drake collection not being enhanced for PS5 whatsoever, it's still like by default gets improved in some areas by just being on the PS5. Like the loadings are, yeah, I'll get to that. like the loadings are much quicker. You playing it on a 4K screen, even though the game is not rendered at 4K, you like seeing this game on a 4K TV makes the game look sharper in a way. Like it works well with upscaling.
Almost too sharp sometimes, honestly.
Yeah, like it works well with upscaling, but it just goes to show me, like, to me, playing this 2 years after the last time I played them, especially going through 1 and 2, which are the ones that I fully finished, and I'm still going through 3. Like 1, I feel gets too much of a bad rap about how badly aged it is. I disagree. There are sections that don't age well. Jet skis, that's only 2. There's only 2 sections in jet skis, but that game is so brief, so short, so straight to the point that I got through it. I started at like 1 p.m. By 5 p.m. I was done. Playing it on easy, by the way.
Yeah.
You have to play it on easy. If you play it on normal or hard, you're gonna.
Oh no.
Because that game is like, it can get really difficult because it's the one thing that I'm glad that it has improved as the series went along is the monster closets. You're in this arena, here comes one wave of enemies, now here comes the other wave, and now here comes the other wave. And but it happens because of the length of the game, is that you can kind of get over it. And I really still appreciate how, now again looking at things academically, just thinking, man, this was Naughty Dog's first attempt at not doing a 3D platformer. The first 3 Crash games, then doing CTR, then the first 3 Jak games, and then doing Jak X. Like doing 3 platformers and a racer. That was their first time at doing a sort of platformer, but a third-person shooter. Before that, it was Kill Switch on PS2, the one that started making cover-based shooting popular. And then Gears of War was the one that in the modern era of that generation was the one that popularized it.
That was the one that everybody tried to recreate after.
Exactly, yeah. And if there's one thing that I would say that Uncharted does better than Gears of War, it's environment. Because it's like Gears of War, it's post-apocalyptic, dilapidated, very great, especially during that era in the 360. That was like the monochromatic, brown. And then just thinking, man, it's like a lot of people, because I started thinking, it's like, I've been very vocal. I am not a fan of tropical settings nowadays. And I love the setting of Uncharted 1, but then it really hit me. I know why I loved it, because at the time it was fresh seeing a tropical setting in the midst of all the monochromatic stuff that was happening in gaming, that the way that game pops with color, and especially in its style, because it's not a realistic, a photorealistic jungle. It's still like the colors are more vivid, the colors are like more aggrandized, the character models have that. Is that your wife?
Yeah. I was saying hi to her.
Yeah, and it's like the character models have that kind of like cartoony realism to them. By the way, though, you have to see how Nathan Drake looked in the PS3 version versus how it looks in the Nathan Drake collection.
What did they do?
He looks like clay in
Really?
the PS3 version, and the Nathan Drake collection, Bluepoint went and tried to transpose some of the character model from 2 and 3, where they start adding a little bit more beard and all that, and put it in 1, so he doesn't look as bad. And they did the thing that I also mentioned way back when I did Mass Effect Legendary Edition. At least visually, now it's more aligned with what comes after, that the jumps are not as massive. The jump from Uncharted 1, you should look it up. Put like,
I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, put like Nathan Drake Uncharted 1 PS3 versus PS4 comparison. You'll see like he looks weird, and I had not realized that they didn't complete the shader of his face, because Uncharted 1 was also a very tortured development, because it was the first PS3 game Naughty Dog had made, and they got the dev tools like completely changed halfway through development, and they also tell like Uncharted 1 is one that they're like, it is a miracle that thing came out and that people like it, because Naughty Dog itself is not proud. It doesn't have too much pride on that first game, because they know that they knew how they could do it better, but they needed to put it out because Sony needed out something in 2007, because 2007 was legendarily one of PlayStation's worst years ever, where none of the exclusives that they had were well received other than Ratchet and Clank, and they lost exclusives, and their multi-platform games were the worst on PS3, and they were more expensive at that time. That was when the PS3 was still the $600 console, when the 360 was in the $299, $399 range, and the games were just looking better there. So that's why they said that, yeah, that Uncharted game needed to come out. It absolutely needed to come out, and because of the context a lot of people took to it. It's like people were more surprised about Uncharted 1 than they had expected it, because everyone was like, oh, this is Dude Raider. I don't know if you remember that. It was like, yeah, this is
I vaguely remember that phrase, and all of a sudden it's like, oh gosh, I forgot people were really comparing a lot of the Tomb Raider stuff to this, and gosh, and then Tomb Raider tried to do the reboot, and everyone compared it back to Uncharted. And
but to be fair, it's like the way that Tomb Raider was rebooted was because of what they saw with Uncharted.
Yeah, definitely.
So it was the ping ponging of both series was really interesting, but kind of like I said, like with Uncharted 1, it's like it's always, I think me having played it when I did, because obviously I know that you experienced 2 first. I experienced 1 first. I saw that jump. And I think you haven't played 1 in the Nathan Drake collection, right?
I did. That was the only way I was able to play it, but not
but you said I remember saying that you played the PS3 version.
Okay, yeah. So I don't think I ever actually did on the true collection.
Yeah.
So
you only you only I know your memory is like a complete sponge. I just remember when we did the context of things, because I know that you played Uncharted 2 for the first time at your youth passer, and it completely blew you away.
And later on, I think I went back on the PlayStation 3 when I got it myself to play it, and I think that's one of the reasons why I just did not vibe with it at all, because I was stepping down from the awesomeness of 2.
Yeah.
It's
it's the worst way to experience that thing the first time. Is like it's like experiencing gradually is like you see what it is. It's a rough game, but then it makes you really appreciate the colossal, and I mean colossal jump between 1 and 2 that I still feel. Absolutely. You still feel it from moment 1. It's like Naughty Dog, like I sent you a bunch of tweets from the game director Bruce Straley that he really led Uncharted 2. It's like he puts it well. It's like Uncharted 2 was Naughty Dog saying, we kind of knew what we wanted to do with the first game. We knew how we can improve. We want to make something awesome, and that's what they did. And I was just flashing back. It's like Uncharted 2 was a statement. It was like an amazing proof of concept of like what a studio at the top of their game can take the lessons from the first game and make a game so much better in so many elements in its sequel, that replaying it right now on Nathan Drake collection. The thing is that 2 years ago, I still enjoyed playing Uncharted 2, but I enjoyed it more now. I don't know if it's that we're 13 years away from when that game came out, and so the farther I get away from it and I see how it looks, I still like remain very impressed. I don't use photo mode, and I have been like screenshotting so much and putting it in our chat, because I'm like, am I crazy or this thing still looks stunning?
It's crazy because in like still moments it looks fantastic still, and I think we're like touching on my issues because I've recently been replaying Uncharted 3, one of the playthroughs that I'm having with my wife, so that she can actually experience this awesome storyline. And it's just put out, playing it on PS5, that is, pointing out a lot of mechanical issues that I've been having with the entire series up until now, and it's like almost bringing me down on the series, where I'm so glad that you're loving it, and then I'm going back and playing parts of it, and I was like, gosh, this doesn't look anything like my memories of it. And
that's the thing, like to me it looks just as I remember.
Which is so funny because I wish I don't know, it's something to do with either the lighting, and then there was parts of like Uncharted 2's tutorial area where they were on the tropical island where Drake's eyes were like black, like his eyes weren't rendering right.
I'll just say this: I don't know if there's something because you have a disc, right?
Yes. No.
I want.
No, I'm not playing it on disc. It
Are
was
you playing it?
digital.
Okay, you're playing it digital. Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't had that thing happen to me. Like 2 was pristine the whole thing way through.
I'll
3
I'll
is
have
where
a lot of
3 is where I am. Yeah. 3 is where like some of the problems are like creeping in for me. Of like, I don't remember. I played through this on 2020. I don't remember many of these things happen. One thing that I'm noticing more now, especially playing through Uncharted 3, is like 3 is always a weird testament of a studio that they saw that they climbed Mount Everest and they now needed to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in the same exact time. Seeing how they had like the way Nathan Drake moves on Uncharted 2 is like, it's so well animated and so simple looking that works. Drake in 3 overly animates. He like, I understand if you're getting close to a wall, you would put your hand to kind of like put. He literally stretches his hand to touch things. Like it's weird. And
I remember back in the day, I used to love that detail, and then lately, I've like get just a little too close to any wall, and he's going.
Yeah. He just started, because here's the thing. Like, play Uncharted 4, and he still does that, but it doesn't feel weird because movement on 4 now feels natural. On 3. They try to overly animate for it to feel like, oh, they're, you know, this weird criticism that has been happening of like, oh, look, they're reusing animations. And it's like, who cares? It's like, do you walk differently 2 years later or how you walk, Paul? It's like, so some of the things that people are nitpicking, they just don't realize how stupid they sound. But I feel like Naughty Dog is like, they liked saying that their games don't look similar one to another. And to be fair, it's like there's visual improvement from 3 to 2. Like faces, the face of Nathan Drake looks so much better. Same with Sully. The one that looks weird is Elena because
I don't know what they did with that, and I had a whole rant about it, so I don't want to get into it here. But I think they changed it somewhat back in the new collection to more the way either they changed 1 and 2's Elena to look more like 3 or vice versa.
Yeah, the thing is that they said that the way Elena looks in 3, her eyes are a little bit more Asian looking, was like the original concept. So
okay, so is that why? Because it was such a weird jump when everybody else looks exactly the same, and I was like, did her like face model like just decide not to work that day?
Because that's the thing, like the characters in this series, they don't look like the actors. Maybe the one you can make the argument is maybe Nolan North.
You could make the argument. I would say not until maybe the 4th game do you really get the subtleties of that, which I respect, because imagine if they'd tried to and we looked back on that now, it would look horrendous. But because they were so stylized in their realism, they somehow still kind of have this action figure quality that looks more charming than jarring, as opposed to any like PS2 and PS3 action game of the time going overly rendered and looking like trash in a year. So I'm glad it's held up as well as it has, but it's definitely starting to like, it's that toy you break out every year as a kid and then you play with it again later on and you're just like, wow, this is falling apart.
And I feel like, and just to add more, and I feel 3 more than the other 2 because it's the one that started streaming assets in a different way. There are times I actually put a clip that I was gonna send today. There's a section where I'm like moving the camera like slowly, and like an entire building would just disappear. And I was like, I don't remember noticing that on 2. Is there something with the way, because I know that 3 was one of the few games that needed a double layer Blu-ray to work compared to 1 and 2 because they put that much data because they overly animated so much. And also the way Nate moves, like he stumbles way too often. Like it just doesn't feel like you're like cleanly moving from place to place. It's like it's like has a very overly jumpy quality to the animation. Not just him, but sometimes I played the marketplace area from Gemin today right before we record when you're walking with Sully and Elena, and I was noticing that they were like snapping into place when they were like going downstairs. And then snapping into place when they're like normal, and then walking forward. I was like, am I crazy? Is this how it's always been, or is this like this something weird that
I'm convinced that the PS5 did something to the way like pieces of code fit together is just not quite synced up anymore, and it's
Yeah.
making the whole thing feel a little out of sync with itself.
Yeah.
I don't know how to
Yeah,
describe it beyond that.
I'm literally this close to it because I told you about my friend that I let borrow the PS4 because I wasn't using it. I'm gonna tell him bring that thing back because I want to like see 3 again and just to make sure that it's not just my memory playing tricks on me or if there's actually something wrong with the PS5. But I tell you, it's like with 3, despite those issues for me, it's like I have always had a tug and pull between which one's my favorite between the original trilogy and 2 and 3, because I feel like there are elements of 3 in concept and in what it does that I like better than 2. I like 3's story better, with the exception of the tentpole writing that happens there, where you know that some things had to be written because of sequences that were built before writing had been completed, so they had to try to fit those in. A few things work well. One big section, the middle big pirate section that ends with the cruise ship, is the one element that I feel Amy Hennig, the writer, didn't write anything that made sense for why that would happen. And if you could excise that entire section, the story would still work. And they only kept it because they loved their water animation, they loved the physics. Because the thing is that to me, the capsized boat set piece is probably defined as like the most technically impressive set piece they've ever done, because of the idea of building an entire level whose water has its own physics, flips it, and it becomes like a platforming level. And seeing that in that level quality is like, it's not as like in your face as like the train or the collapsing building and the collapsing chateau or the airplane where you're just like falling. But it's like there's still like a level of technicality that's like really impressive to see in that set piece. But everything in Uncharted 2 flows. I feel everything that's in that game makes sense, with the exception of the final third. That I feel like 2 has such momentum that then just grinds to a halt when you're in the monastery, and then when the blue dudes come out, like as soon as the blue dudes show up, it's like the combat becomes less fun in 2.
It's terrible after that point.
And though there's ways to cheese it. If you get the crossbows, you can
I only found that out after the fact, and that makes me so frustrated.
So you were like unloading all the clips all the time.
I never touched the crossbow because I always pictured like, okay, well, like they give me 2 shots or something. It's not worth the bullets that I already have with the other.
And it
guns.
kills them in one shot.
Yeah, who would have thought? And that's another example where it sounds like they were trying to push you to use the crossbow on them, but then I never felt like I needed to. So then,
to be fair,
I only found that out on watching like a video essay on it.
I found out by accident back in 2009 because I had run out of ammo with my AK-47. I was like, okay, let me try this. I was like, wait, what? And
I thought all the times that they required you to have it, there was like an infinite ammo.
Only when you're fighting the Yetis.
Okay.
But when you're like now fighting the blue dudes, the one that had like the blue dudes in Shambhala, that like the whole Shambhala section of that game of Uncharted 2 is probably the game at its weakest for me. It's like it's it's visually dull at that point. Yeah. It's those spongy enemies. It's like kind of, they annoy you unless you know how to fight them. And the Lazarevich fight is just not good.
Nah, but I would say it's still somehow like the second best boss fight in the series.
I would say the best boss fight in the series is in 3.
No, it's a quick time event.
It's not a quick time event. It's like it's a melee section that fits the entire way that game feels. Because it's like the game didn't change its mechanics. Like you fight him the way you fight many enemies. So it's like,
yeah, but that's part of the problem, because the I don't know, the melee fighting as time has gone on has gotten a little frustrating to me. And I didn't mention it in the group chat, but there was an example where it wasn't allowing me to dodge roll because it was like, the armored enemies, they don't really let you melee them. They'll just kind of like push you aside. Well, trying to dodge roll away from them was like auto causing that in animation to keep happening. So I would try to dodge roll, and then he'd grab me and throw me, grab and throw, and then somebody else just kept shooting.
The thing is that if you're at a close vicinity with an enemy, circle is grab, not dodge.
which is funny because they changed that for Uncharted 4.
And that's
because that
that's
is
your
the
problem,
dodge roll.
and that's your problem because they don't have counter in 4.
No,
in
they
in,
don't.
in 3 you don't dodge roll to like to evade enemies. It's like in 3 you have to press triangle like in Batman. That was kind of like the idea of like pressing triangle to counter and dodge, and that's a your problem there. But it's like that's how that melee combat was like designed. They that's the big thing with 3. It's like their big focus. There's so many parts of this game where you're just like fighting hand to hand like a bunch of enemies, and
but it's all like the same animations too. Over so many examples, it's like the
especially
same
with the
problem
with the
the
big
2018
guys.
God of War.
Yeah, with the big guys, right?
It's the Technicolor troll problem, except it's a bunch of British guys.
Yes.
And
it's always
the
like
same
punch,
moves,
punch,
kick in
block,
the groin,
kick in the groin, punch. Then he tries to grab you from the neck, and then you touch again. And
so like at least the boss fight is different, but because it's basically breaks down to exactly what you've been doing the entire rest of the game, it just did not feel good to me. So that's why at least like.
And that's the thing. Like I'd rather that than a fight where you have to like destroy blue sap to damage it, because it's like it's just them forcing a gaming mechanic in something that it's not part of the whole game, just to try to have a boss fight.
I also didn't know the first time I played Uncharted 2, I didn't know the blue sap was how I was supposed to do it, so I just spent like 30-40 minutes just trying to shoot him and accidentally damaging him through hitting the blue saps, because I knew eventually I would get the cutscene of him taking damage. So I was like, does he just take 1,000 bullets to take injuries? Oh, so that's
I will say people meme on it, especially because the director also memes on it. But I feel like the sword fight with Rafe at the end of 4 is a decent enough boss fight, even though it also has the Uncharted 2 problem of doing something mechanically that doesn't make sense with the rest of the game. But at least as a conclusion of things,
because especially the fact that you are literally only blocking the entire time, and sometimes his attacks don't make sense from the direction you're supposed to hit. Like his spin move is like a left button, even though he's coming at you from the right, and it's weird.
Now, do you know that there was supposed to be a sword fight in the second flashback of 4? When you're at
that would explain a lot of like why there's all of a sudden a sword fight and almost no explanation for it.
Yeah, because they wanted to use that kind of like to introduce the idea before they did it in the end. The problem is that tonally it didn't work with that session. That was like very like solemn and quiet.
Which part were you saying that it was going to be? Because you said the second flashback that's in the mansion, right?
Yes, the one that reveals everything.
I feel like that could have easily been done, because they're just goofing off, putting on the helmets and everything, very Last of Us style. So I feel like if Sam had come at you with like a sword and you're like, all right, do a left, do a right, do a left, and then that was it.
Yeah, the thing is that they made a point about being quiet. So it didn't.
I mean, they were very much not being quiet by the end of that. They're goofing off, knocking stuff over. So honestly, it's kind of a miracle that they didn't get caught by that lady before they did. Because I was like, guys, aren't we supposed to be quiet? And they're like playing music and stuff. And like, I think there was a point where you put like a record on, isn't there?
I don't remember. I
might be blending that with Last of Us, but I feel like there was a point where you play music. But anyway. Yeah, so Uncharted, wonderful series, getting a little rough and up there in years. I wish that my memory of it wasn't so immaculate that now it feels like I need to bring it down a couple notches to be realistic.
Yeah, and the irony is like the only memory that I feel that's happening to me, it's only with 3. 1 and 2, I just had the time of my life again.
I will say 3 actually looks the best that I ever remembered out of it. So I feel like visually it's better than I've ever seen.
No, and that's the thing. Like the way how I see it is that 2 is the most consistent experience I had playing all of these right now. 3 is more prone to highs and lows, but I feel like the exotic, like 3 is probably the most exotic out of all 3 of them. Like the places you go is like it starts in a London pub, then goes to Colombia.
At least varied for sure, because like 1 always felt the same. Even 4 spends a lot of time in the same area.
Near the end, because there's a globetrotting feeling to 4 right before you're stuck in the island.
Yeah, I mean, Kings Bay and the final area kind of felt the same to me in a lot of ways, but at the same time, that's a bit of a different system, because I always treated, all right, new set piece means Drake is wearing a different shirt, because in the past that's always what he did, but in 4 he wore the same blue shirt for both of them. And I
Yeah.
was like, this feels the same to me. I wonder why.
Mhm.
Anyway, so gosh, there was one last thing I wanted to mention though, and it's that imagine if they had gone back through the series as they did The Last of Us Part 1 in its
Mhm.
remake, and
Funny that you mentioned
put all
it.
the
That was,
mechanics.
and here's what's funny. That was the idea. They
Oh, you're
the
gonna
last
break
of,
my heart now.
the Last of Us Part One originally was made by the Sony Visual Arts support studio. It's like a studio incubated in San Diego that assists with everything. Like if Naughty Dog needs help, the Visual Arts would kind of come help with like art assets and all of that.
Yeah.
And the Visual Arts team wanted to kind of take a project more to itself. And originally they wanted to whatchamacallit, do Uncharted because they knew that it was way old. The problem is that they said that the way to rebuild that game like from the ground up, especially with such old code as it is right now, it would like take a bigger team to do what they were trying to do. So they were like, what if we do The Last of Us? Because we have assets from 2. What if we could like try to make 1 look like 2? And they started working on that, and then Naughty Dog got a whiff of it, and then they were like, you know what? If we're doing this, we're doing it ourselves also, and you guys will help. And that's where Part 1 came from. Like the visual arts team like did all the pre-production needed for Part 1 to look like 2 because they aided with the completion of 2 near the end. And kind of that's what had happened. But like 1,
Do you think there's still a chance that they'll revisit the Uncharted?
I was actually, right now that I was playing, I was just thinking, I was like, if they are doing this work to do that with Part 1, why don't they do that with the Uncharted trilogy? I mean,
I would say if they even just started with 1 just by itself and remade it from the ground up, I think that would be such a good gauging point for the series.
I also feel what I do find interesting. I feel the departure of Amy Hennig from Uncharted from Naughty Dog has played a part in why like Naughty Dog doesn't really touch Uncharted much, because like 1, 2, and 3 are Amy's babies. Those games came and went, and she was the creative director of them. 4, they had to 4 was like an obligation to Naughty Dog in a way because the project was already underway. It had already been announced, so it was like and the series such integral to Naughty Dog becoming modern Naughty Dog that it was like their it felt like a duty to them to get it done, because it was like it was gonna save them face, because it'd be like, wait, you announced an Uncharted as the series that put you on the map and you're canceling the new one? What the heck?
That would have probably burned Naughty Dog at the stake for me, because imagine cutting that off. I mean, like 3 did have a nice ending to the series, but 4
is so much better in ending.
Compare the 2 in hindsight, 4 blows 3 out of the water. Gosh, I just
and I always said it's like the only thing that to me 3 is better than 4 is in exotic locations and set pieces. 4 is a more cohesive experience, is a better looking experience, is a better told experience, because there's so much in 3 that is left to the imagination in a way that doesn't feel satisfying. The whole thing with Talbot's magic tricks.
That was frustrating.
Yes. And also now learning by the grapevine that 3 had to cut so much also because of its unmovable deadline. It's like 3 was like a lesson to Naughty Dog of never announcing a release date when you announce your game, and they wanted to prove to the world that they were like, no, we're announcing the date and we're shipping it that day. I mean, I sent you the article from that it was like the game was broken 2 days before the Gold Master, so it was like they had to like fix it in like 2 days to get that thing going. And seeing some of the jank, you've seen some of the animation work and all that, you see that there's an underlying sense of this doesn't feel fully cooked, but it is impressive that it can look like this. The story can be as well told as it is, that it can still be a fun Uncharted experience, and it was made in 2 years. I feel that blows my mind. That these games all had only one had a 3-year dev cycle, but it was technically a year and a half because half of that work had to be like excised when the final PS3 dev kits came in, and they were like much weaker than they were anticipating, so they had to like rework so much, and that's why Naughty Dog doesn't feel too much pride in that, because they know that it was a heavily compromised experience based on last minute tools. But 2 was like made in 2 years. In fact, an entire year was taken by the train.
Gosh, really?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, considering how good the train is, I can see why.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the fact that the forest has to, and the mountains
Mm-hmm.
have to loop
Yeah.
seamlessly without you noticing that they're looping.
Exactly.
Is just crazy.
No, and that's the thing. Like, people don't give the train section of Uncharted 2 to like the credit it deserves, because it was the first time you were playing a train level that wasn't being simulated, that didn't have like assets simulated while you were inside to like show movement. It was an actual train that it's moving through environment. It's constantly streaming environment, has its own physics. The same kind of physics also can affect the way combat feels. There, it's like that thing is it's a technical masterpiece, like what they did with that train, and seeing how they were able to take that a little bit to the next level with Lost Legacy by also mixing the driving the car and jumping in and out. Obviously, it's like, because it's another train, it's not like this is new, but it was like it's the same but taken to the next level. And
because the first time I played it, I remember comparing it too much to the Train of 2, and I was like really harsh on it. And then when revisiting, I was like, oh shoot, the way it blends between the train from 2 and the driving from 4, and then the melee combat and the shooting, and it's all coming full circle simultaneously with 2 separate fights going on at the same time is just, I don't even know how I would begin to approach that. And I'm so glad I didn't have to.
Let's just say it like this. It's like, I feel like the stature of Naughty Dog currently, it's such that everyone wants to see them fail. But the
especially after 2, Last of Us 2 rather.
But even before that game came out, already people were like, as soon as the leaks hit, they found like a way to like try to trash them. But the thing is that they have a reputation for a reason. And replaying this makes me realize that it's like there's a reason why Naughty Dog is like such a like important gaming studio, because their level of technical proficiency on everything they do is like, in certain aspects, is beyond any other studio. Especially what they were able to do early, the standards they set that now we're seeing in every game. Because I kept seeing it's like, without Uncharted 2, without The Last of Us, I don't get my God of War.
Right.
Yeah, it's like there's like a specific origin point of
it
like
all
what
ties into itself.
Yeah, it all ties to itself. It's like Spider-Man 2018 could have just been another Spider-Man game, but because it took the lessons of the importance of writing and filming techniques that Naughty Dog perfected with Uncharted, and they put them now in a Spider-Man game, it elevated that product. Ghost of Tsushima learned a lot, like Infamous Second Son started like leaning more into like the mocap and like the performance and all that. But Ghost of Tsushima is like, it's again like taking that to the next level again, and inspiration from Naughty Dog. It's like Naughty Dog really is, whether people like it or not, it's like a true influence on how the presentation of games evolved. Obviously, other studios have taken that and maybe have added maybe more fun gameplay. I would say Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, God of War are more fun games to play nowadays. But
Spider-Man, gosh, by itself.
Exactly, just Spider-Man by itself. But I feel like that doesn't take away from the level of technical proficiency of Naughty Dog. And replaying this is like, it's making me realize where's the origin of what makes my ideal favorite game.
Yeah.
It started with them. It's like, especially with Uncharted 2 was the perfect proof of concept, and I still enjoyed 3 and 4 in their own ways. Then Last of Us, the series, being able to tell a meaningful story, because you can't say Uncharted tells meaningful stories, they tell fun stories. But Last of Us 1 was the first time of meaningfully telling that through both cutscenes and gameplay, which is what then God of War took to the next level, but then making it also a gamey ass game.
Yeah.
So it's so funny seeing kind of like the origin of that concept getting like the evolution, even though if it wasn't from like the same studio. So,
and how it all branches out in different ways, where each of them kind of took a separate learning lesson and turned that concept into such a strong building point, you know?
Yeah. And more importantly, it's just being reminded that there's a reason why I like Indiana Jones a lot. Pulp action adventure is so fun, and it's sad that we don't get much of that right now, and it makes me like appreciate it even more now. So
I really hope that the Indiana Jones 5 is good, because whenever one of those movies is good, that's when people really seem to take that, hey, what if I made another game like this? And
yes,
then
and we're still have to see what Machine Games does with the Indiana Jones game.
Gosh,
Is it gonna be a first-person shooter Indiana Jones because they did Wolfenstein, or they are actually doing it in?
I really hope not, because the shooting was such a small part of Indiana Jones's whole mythos that if they focus too much on that, I think it would just lose.
And I also, speaking of the shooting, it's like obviously a lot of people make fun that Uncharted it was like the purveyor of the whole looter narrative, the dissonance criticism of like Nathan Drake in cutscenes. He's such a happy-go-lucky character that's always escaping by the seat of his pants. But when you're playing as him, he's mauling armies of dudes without breaking a sweat. And then people are like, man, Last of Us feels like a response to that, because now like the violence in the gameplay makes sense within the story. So it's funny. It's so funny seeing the ways people like to find criticism of something that becomes so popular, but also the ways Naughty Dog find way to kind of like, oh, you said that, look at this now. And that's where Last of Us came out. But it's like there's a reason. It's like still shout out to Uncharted. It's so sad that your experience, especially right now with Uncharted 3, is like you're having such a janky experience compared to what I'm having, that it's just more minimal for me, that I'm still like being reminded. I was like, man, 2011 I was all over this, man, 2009 I was all over this. These were my games. And it feels good, especially with that distance, being like, yeah, there's a reason why I used to like stand this series so much, despite not standing as much for it now, especially because it ended. So
that's I'm just hoping that whenever it finally comes time to go to 4, I'm gonna be just eating that up so good, because that's where they just peaked at all of the process of the action, the story, the mechanics, and it just all felt so...
I agree with mechanics, I agree with story, I agree with visuals. I don't agree with action, because that game is the one that has the least action of all of them.
It still feels good to do, but then see, that's just where it comes back to the mechanic side of it with 2 and 3. When that flow is broken, it really is like the flow is, you have to build back up to that momentum, especially if you're in the middle of a really great momentous moment, and then because he jumps off to the side, you just killed all the momentum because it decided it wanted to jump to the left instead of forward or something.
4 has better design. Everything feels more blended together. That's the one thing that I feel it blends, being able to get into an action scene and being able to jump into something. It feels more deliberate there than in the other ones. The other ones are a little bit more start and stop because they're a little bit more linear. At the same time, it's like 4 being longer than the other ones, almost combined, and also not having as many action sequences because they deliberately created less action sequences in 4.
Yeah,
and
it's blended in such a way that it almost is acceptable.
Yeah.
That
it depends how much you like climbing. There's a lot of climbing in 4. So,
but because I guess the addition of the driving and the grappling hook, you almost don't feel it because you're enjoying these 2 very new features that add so much depth to the platforming and the going from one place to the other that it almost doesn't matter. And the driving is so good that I'm just like, I could just like drift around trees for a little while.
Especially in Madagascar.
Oh, it's so good. And then Lost Legacy just, of course, took that and said, hey, let's just
do an open world. Yeah, just do an open world.
Turn that into something. Gosh, they just need to make a whole game about that driving, and I'd be set.
That's the irony. It's like Naughty Dog's always the 4th game they ever do in a series. They do a racing game. This time, in Uncharted 4, they added the cars. So
they needed to do a director's cut of Uncharted 4 where they just add a racing mini game for the Jeep.
I'll say though that it's like I always say that I always have the best time playing 4 as soon as I complete the trilogy, so I can't wait to dive back to it, especially now at 60 frames, because I want to see how I feel about the combat now.
I think, didn't I say that I replayed it after the 60 frames patch? Or
no, you played Lost Legacy.
That was after the 60 frames, right?
The collection.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, then I at least saw parts of it, what it can be capable of, and it
Yeah,
felt
and I
great.
and I played a little bit because I started playing 4 again, and I only did the first 2 hours, and I tell you, it's like this. The intro of that game is boring as shit. So that's why, like, I was like, I can't do this right now. And then
It's a
I
slow burn.
exactly, but that works well for me, like following the replay. So I can't wait to do that. By itself, it's like I can. I had to carry the momentum. I build the momentum of 3 games to then lead to that final crescendo. It's
You
kind
have
of
to
like.
feel the Blade Runner patience. You got to
Mhm.
be like, all right, I know it's gonna pop off. I just got to sit through this.
Yeah.
But I can understand, especially if you're not in the right headspace, where you're like,
Mhm.
I want action, and then it plays through 4 hours of let's have
Walking and
conversation
climbing and
and
all that. And the thing is that
yeah,
I love that, and I love because I love the story of that game. But sometimes I just like playing it. And I think 2 and 3 makes me allowed to chapter select the action parts more quickly.
yeah,
The only way to do that in 4 is doing the scenarios that it lets you play out. Kind of
right.
like because you can like jump specific to scenarios.
Uh-huh.
But then it's like it janks you out of the experience. Okay, you play this, so it janks you out. So.
Yeah, and you don't have any of the context. You don't feel the flow of the moment and stuff.
Mhm.
That's the same problem I had with The Last of Us 2 combat encounters, which I love for especially trophies.
Mhm.
But it's like, all right, cool, we get to do all the action, and then I'm like, gosh, I don't have any of the before part and the after, and it kind of messes me up. So
And it gets to tell you, it's like, if there's something that I have to commend Naughty Dog, it's like how important everything is that you cannot just boil it down to one thing. Their
Definitely.
experiences are complete experiences. So yeah, it's like, I'm glad I'm back in the Uncharted mood. I hope that 3 eventually turns the corner as you're in the final better parts of it. So,
I'm hoping so, because I don't remember really liking the final part of it, because I thought the plane segment was the best part of the whole game, and I already got past that. So I'm like, gosh, I don't remember what happens next.
so
I
you
really
have to,
hope it's
you
cool.
yeah, you have to walk through the desert. You find the
I already
destroyed city,
did that. I
the
found
caravan.
that I just finished the caravan, and then the sandstorm was happening.
Yeah.
So I think I have the whole part where I'm in the city, and that should be it, because I was like 88% done
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah. So like, after the sandstorm, you get into Iran. Then
Okay,
the whole
yeah.
thing that happens with Sully, and then
Freaking
the flaming
water.
dudes.
Yeah. I hate that part, honestly. So I'm just like, it's such a good game, but filled with really weird decisions sometimes that makes me frustrated about the whole process. So anyway,
Highs and lows. That's what I
welcome
said.
to the Uncharted podcast,
Yes.
where we talk about Uncharted all the time.
Oh yeah, but enough about talking about Uncharted. We got a few news to talk about, Paul. So press X.
For some news.
All right. So, Paul, this morning, number 1, Nintendo and Platinum Games have officially unveiled the release date of the perpetually delayed Bayonetta 3. Originally announced at the 2017 Game Awards, Bayonetta 3 is officially coming in October 28. As relayed by BGC, the news was shared alongside the publication of a new gameplay trailer for the sequel, along with 45 new screenshots. According to Nintendo's new game details shared on Wednesday, Bayonetta 3 will see players meet a veritable coven of Bayonettas, each more fabulous than the last, while fighting through the streets of Tokyo, the mountains of China, and beyond. As also spotted by BGC, this one is hilarious. The game will also include a nudity censoring mode called Naive Angel mode, which will stop Bayonetta from losing her clothes. As Platinum Games mentions it, by setting this mode to on, you may be able to play in the living room without creating an awkward atmosphere.
Yeah, I gotta say, I appreciate that, because I can't play Bayonetta at all without feeling really dirty.
Yeah, when her clothes become like the big hair that becomes a thing,
Yep.
and it's like
it's awkward, that's for sure.
yeah. Man, that's the thing. Bayonetta would be your kind of game. It's from the DMC guy.
Normally it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly why I couldn't play it at the time. And then I tried to revisit the first game, and it aged so much that I was like, I don't think I could enjoy this the best anymore.
Yeah. 2 is still very enjoyable. A lot of people stand for 2.
Which did they ported that, didn't they? Finally,
It's on the Switch. It's because
Right.
Nintendo published it. Only the first game
Yeah,
is a
that's what it was.
multi-platform.
Okay, so yeah, and I never touched 2, so that's why I'm like, well, I guess I just never had an opportunity to get into it at the right time, because even now, as much as I love DMC, I can't touch the old games. It's just too long. And as we've seen, same problem I've had with Uncharted, because as I get removed from things, I have a harder time getting back into
Yeah,
things.
I'm noticing that it's hard for you to like get put into the mindset of how things were.
It
So,
really
like,
is,
yeah,
especially
I
in
don't
the
have that
quality of
problem.
life zone.
Yeah.
I'll sit there, and I mean, I didn't even mention it on my played games because a few weeks ago I tried the Splinter Cell games,
Oof.
and
Yeah.
I tried about 10 minutes of I think Chaos Theory, and I was just like, this is really not fun because I'm spending 45 minutes
Programming your control.
at the options, trying to figure out how the controller works, where they have all the buttons mapped,
Mhm.
and it played like a SOCOM Navy SEALs game, and then I was like, I just need to have some of these games in my memory and remember how cool they were at the time, and then just not touch them again.
Well, the difference is that you
Hurts my
never
soul.
played Chaos Theory, so you wouldn't know. So.
No, I didn't. But
Wow.
because it reminded me so much of the old SOCOM games, I was like, oh, this is dope. I'm going to get so into this. And then I couldn't figure out how anything. Aiming was A.
Yeah,
That's so it's like.
yeah. You press you in the Xbox controller. You press the X button, to like pull up your gun and then
Yeah.
just aim. That's how those games used to
And
work. You
aim
press-
was like fire was R1,
Mhm.
but then sometimes it was burst, sometimes it was a single shot, and I couldn't figure out how to switch my gun to the pistol. It was a whole thing. So
yeah, that was a game. That was a game designed for mouse and keyboard because you play it on PC. It's like that. That's a game that I told you. That's if you want to play those old games, play them on Xbox because
Yeah,
at least
so-
the controls make sense there.
not to turn this into the Splinter Cell segment, but anyway, that's the reason behind why I struggle so much, because part of me is like broken by the quality of life, and the complexity of my life as well has caused it so that I don't want to waste time figuring out how a game works.
Yeah.
Especially if I never played
I'm
it.
glad that I'm so nostalgic. Like, if without that, I could never go back to the old Metal Gear games. I could never go back to a bunch of stuff. Like Resident Evil 4. Like, I love playing that game as it is currently.
Yeah.
And that's still a game that you can't strafe, you can't walk and aim. So it's like but the game was designed for that.
Yeah.
Specifically around that. So I can get into that
because
mindset.
I played that one so much, I could understand it more.
Mhm.
But yeah, like if I went from playing Resident Evil 2 remake to Resident Evil 4 OG, that
It has to. Yeah, you have to do it backwards. First
Yeah,
4
exactly.
and then to a remake. Yeah.
Which I can see why you like to revisit a game in chronological order, because if you do anything besides that, trying
There
to
you go.
play some other things, you're like, oh, I can't go back to this.
And makes you appreciate quality of life as you go forward. So
Absolutely.
chronological is always the way. Like chronologically released, not chronologically timeline.
Correct.
No.
Yes. Don't want to do that either.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway.
So
Good for
Bayonetta,
Bayonetta fans.
yeah, finally, because everyone has been screaming. And this is what's funny. One time we talked about Bayonetta 3 being revealed in one of the Nintendo Directs reactions that we did last year, and I said that I had a very interesting detail about this game that I was gonna mention later, and I never said it in the podcast.
Really? Okay,
And I found that out when I rewatched it. I was like, crap! I never said the interesting detail. The gameplay director of this game is the guy that made Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh.
So them mentioning the whole thing was like, you will see players meet a veritable coven of Bayonettas, each more fabulous than the last, while fighting through the streets of Tokyo, the mountains of China, and beyond. Are they gonna do like level segments, kind of like they did Metal Gear?
I
like-
don't know. That just struck me as like there's gonna be a mission in Tokyo, mission in China, because it's so focused on that DMC style that, and I know she does a lot more traveling, Bayonetta that is, than like something that's much more focused, like a Devil May Cry game.
Yeah, I
where
mean
it's
the
like,
gameplay I can imagine remaining
one
the same. I mean the structure. Remember the structure of MGS5 was like
well, it
the
was
quick
like
the quick
separate areas, right?
separate areas, but also the quick bite-sized missions within that same areas.
Right. Okay.
Them building the game director of that game, as like relayed by Imran Khan from Fanbyte, the guy that we have reported some of his things from in the show that like, he reported RE4, so way before the game was revealed. It just makes me curious, especially with how long this has taken. It's like you don't take 5 years to make another DMC style game.
Yeah,
In,
I don't know what the deal is with Bayonetta. I'm like just far enough outside of it that it
mm,
didn't matter to me, but 5 years since being announced is a
mhm.
lot.
Yeah.
So it's either you're being very ambitious or it's not at all on your priority list. So
Considering Platinum Games was doing like a million different things because
that's
at
what
the
I'm
time, so.
thinking, which is weird because Bayonetta, what you would think would be one of their higher things, but I can also understand a studio wanting to do different stuff than what has succeeded in the
This was
past.
an exclusive. They had multi-platform stuff they wanted to put out, so
Yeah. So I could
I can see
see
why
how
it
like this
wasn't.
is just, hey, we'll get to it when we get to it. We'll have like a small group kind of working on it, but until then,
Astral Chain, which also came from Bayonetta,
yeah.
and also was a Nintendo published game, came in the middle of
Gosh.
this, so maybe that's
What
what
did they
happened.
all make? So they did Astral Chain, they did Babylon's Fall, they did um
The Transformers
Transformers
Devastation,
Devastation.
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, Nier Automata. They were
Was
doing
Revengeance?
Revengeance was
Yeah, it
Platinum
was, well, yeah, obviously, because that was a PS3 and 360
360
game
game.
still. Ported to PC, which
They
I
did
now
the
have.
Star Fox Zero game from Wii U.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What is the deal with them? Normal or Heroes, didn't they do
No,
that?
that's Grasshopper.
Grasshopper. Okay. So yeah, but they've done a lot since then, and it feels like they always take a little while between each project,
Hmm.
no matter what it is. So
They
I could
suffered
see,
the cancellation of Scalebound also.
right, which that still kind of hurts my soul. I feel like that was one of the few things that they do
Ex-
that I was
ex-
like really into
no,
in an
it
aesthetic
was the
way.
thing that looked the coolest from the original Xbox One exclusive
Absolutely.
lineup that
Oh my
a bunch
gosh.
of
Yeah.
those games got canceled, and it's so sad. But they wanted like that's the one game that Platinum is like, yeah, we should like we talked about it in the show that they were like specifically talking about them wanting to work with Microsoft again to make that game, and kind of saying something about being acquired, and
Yeah.
the
That's right. Yeah.
especially after the destruction that was Babylon Fall. That thing was foobarred.
I really hope that that kind of made them perk their ears up and they're like, okay, we can't just hit it out of the park every time. We got to try.
Yeah, the thing is that they're so inconsistent also.
Extremely.
So
Yeah.
that
Which
doesn't
I
help.
don't. I think that's one reason why I don't trust them whenever I hear that they're making a new game. I'm like, let's see what this one's gonna be like.
Yeah, it's not like they have so many hits and so many misses, almost in equal proportions of when they come out. Like the Legend of Korra game they did was also horrible.
Oh my
So,
gosh, that was them.
Yeah,
Oh no.
yeah. So you know,
I think I said it on.
yeah, you wanted to
this.
do like a review of that thing, like when you were
I
the
did a
tour.
review. There exists somewhere on YouTube. I don't know if it's unlisted or not, but that was a duo between me and my roommate that we tried reviewing that. Oh man,
And it was so bad. So.
it was terrible, and I was blinded to the fact that I loved Korra so much.
Mhm.
Whew. But yeah,
So in a macro level now, this is a Nintendo published game. This is their October game. So in 2 weeks, they're putting out Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Then in September, they're putting out Splatoon 3.
yeah.
Then a month later, they're having Bayonetta 3 on top of having Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope. And then November is where the Pokemon games are. So,
Which
Paul,
Pokemon is so removed. If I had to guess, it's November or December for a possible, not possible, Wind Waker or Twilight Princess game.
and Metroid. Remember, Metroid Prime was reported.
Oh my gosh, Metroid too. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say Metroid in December, Legend of Zelda in November, if it happens at all,
So interesting enough.
or they're punting it to the early next year.
So let's flash back to 2002.
All right, let's do it.
The big three Nintendo games that year that they absolutely needed to put out because of the GameCube was in need of games. Super Mario Sunshine, which came out in August that year.
Yeah.
Metroid Prime, that came out in November. And Zelda Wind Waker, that came out in December.
Okay.
So obviously Mario Sunshine, for the people that got to buy it in the 3D All-Stars collection, RIP, you can find it for $300 on eBay.
Yeah.
Metroid Prime, I can see them being like, yeah, in the exact month of the 20th anniversary, that's when we're putting this thing in November. Because the thing is that Pokemon is associated with Nintendo. but the Pokemon Company is its own thing.
It's completely separate,
So
so
that's
they don't have
yeah.
any control over those.
Exactly. So I can see them being like, if Metroid Prime remaster / remake, whatever it ends up being called, as per the reports that we read a week or two ago, I can see that being like Nintendo's own thing. Be like, yeah, we're putting this thing on the anniversary. And the thing is that ironically, there's no other company this year that's better prepared than Nintendo. They have everything for the rest of the year. Like Sony barely squeezed in both Last of Us Part 1 and God of War Ragnarok. And TBD, like Ragnarok, I still feel confident, but again, we can't take anything for granted.
Never quite know
until we see going gold. Like Last of Us Part 1 recently went gold.
Yeah,
and
so that we know is September.
Exactly. So, and like I always always constantly remind you, is like the Cyberpunk, we went gold and now we're delaying. That is nothing that it's coming. So when something goes gold, it's shipped. It's like it's gonna be put in this.
Usually is good.
Not games go gold are not good.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like it's good to be printed to be sold. That's the thing of going gold. As soon as we see Cory Barlog or whoever in Santa Monica, they always tweet, "We've gone gold." As soon as we see, as soon as we see that, we should always take this God of War Ragnarok November 9th release date still with a it's coming, but let's not get too excited until we see that they're printing the disc. And Nintendo has more stuff for the rest of this year. They don't need the Zelda, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess. However, they have been buried. Like I'll keep reiterating over and over and over and over again. Every year since Breath of the Wild came out in 2017, there's been a Zelda something. So
how much do you think that's an actual effort on their part, and how much do you think that's coincidentally because of the success of Breath of the Wild? Where they're like, oh, Breath of the Wild did so much, we just need to keep saturating the market with anything Zelda.
It's not much just coincidence, it's fact. A Zelda thing came out every year.
Well, that's okay, yeah, that's the effect of it. I'm curious your opinion on the cause. Do you think they wanted to do that from the beginning, where they're like, all right, Breath of the Wild's going to start it, we're just going to go through like 5 years.
Unless it just so happened that its pipeline was so coincidentally like prepared to release something every year.
Yeah.
So it's like 2017 Breath of the Wild, 2018 Necromancing the Stone, Cadence of Hyrule, 2019 Link's Awakening, 2020 Age of Calamity, 2021 Skyward Sword. It's like, I feel it's like factually you can see that they have been putting something Zelda themed every year.
Yeah.
So this could be the first one where it doesn't happen. The thing is that enough people have reported that they're just sitting on this freaking collection of games. Unless, actually, Paul, Majora's Mask on Nintendo Switch Online came out this year.
Didn't it?
Yeah. In February. That takes care of it.
Nintendo's just like, yep, check it off the box. Send it to next year, boys.
And the thing is that I don't see them in the same year they're going to release Breath of the Wild 2 or whatever that sequel's called. Remember, it's still just called the sequel of Breath of the Wild on YouTube.
Yeah.
They're not going to release that and then the collection of the old games. So
unless you think they really want to strike while the iron's hot and build people up to Breath of the Wild 2 or something.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, we still don't know when Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out. Like, we only have a year. Could it be delayed again?
I think there's such a lack of information because Nintendo loves to hold on to their cards so close that I mean, this is where I feel like Sony tries to be like Nintendo, where they're like, we're not going to tell anybody anything and they're just going to take what we give them and be happy about it. Problem is, Sony tries to put their hand in everything so they can't have their cake and eat it too. Nintendo is just so absentee about everything and aloof that when they put stuff out, we're like, yes, thank you. Bless. Thank you for this Pokemon game. Thank you for this Legend of Zelda game. And that's all that they're going to do.
So let's put it like this, Paul. In 2016, that's when we learned the Zelda game for Wii U was called Breath of the Wild. And then it came out the year after. Nintendo has literally announced everything they need to announce for the rest of this year. Like for there to not be a need for a Nintendo Direct, like there was last year, whose Nintendo Direct fill up the rest of their year. Are we literally gonna get to 2023 when everyone is like, yeah, this sequel is coming out on March, just like the last time? And I'm like, will it? We don't even know the date, not only the date, but also the name. They've intentionally kept the name from us.
We have like zero. I mean, just imagine when we got it released, the details of Breath of the Wild 1, and just the amount, like the floodgates opening on gameplay details, the exact gameplay demos, and all that stuff. It's like we had so much information after a certain point that we have none of that at this point.
Yeah. So here's what's so funny. It's like Nintendo and E3 2016. They didn't show up anything at all. Only Zelda. They just came with Zelda.
Yeah.
That was all they needed. So,
I mean, it was for somebody like me who wasn't even going to buy a Switch. That, like, 1 minute and changed my mind enough to spend $300+ on a Switch and Breath of the Wild. So the fact that we're where we are now, and we haven't seen anything about like the actual plot, characters, and gameplay. We haven't even seen Link's face.
Yeah. We have, but we haven't seen him in the gameplay.
Okay, so yeah, they revealed like some screenshots of his face and stuff, but like there was enough of a gap in information that people were theorizing that it might be Zelda and not Link as the main character. That was how bad it was. So it's like, gosh,
we got the reveal trailer. We got the reveal trailer in 2019.
Yeah.
We got a bit of the gameplay last year.
But gameplay, it was like maybe 10 seconds cumulatively.
The thing is that you know what that gameplay is like, so you know it's gameplay. So
right. So
that's a big difference of doing a sequel, because it's like you can see like a non-HUD, like you see gameplay stuff without HUD, but you know that it makes sense because you know how that first game played. So we've seen gameplay, we just haven't seen uninterrupted 4 or 5 minute like gameplay playthrough.
Right,
we haven't seen that, but we have seen gameplay.
Where I'm kind of waiting to see the actual like unbroken, how's the gameplay going to look in action.
It's like us seeing the Callisto Protocol gameplay trailer at the State of Play. And then
I almost don't even count that like as gameplay because
but
it's a trailer.
No, but it is the gameplay because it's exactly the perspective and everything
realistic. You know, it's when I see the unbroken gameplay is when I'm like, I've seen actual gameplay, because you can make gameplay look like anything in a trailer when it's cut up really quick like that. It can be anything. I mean, we've seen how that plays out. So it's when you see it unbroken, when it runs smoothly and all that. That's when I'm like, we've seen actual gameplay.
And in that case, that was our first time seeing that game. So until we saw it uninterrupted, we saw that what we saw at the State of Play was actually real. And
And then I'll look back and be like, okay, that was real gameplay. But we've seen people fake gameplay so often in this
especially
business.
Ubisoft.
Look at Killzone 2. Go all the way back with the fake gameplay.
Yeah, that's the kind of like the king of like the fake trailers. So.
Oh my gosh, that's stuff. I mean, BioShock Infinite even did it.
Yeah,
but BioShock 1 did it actually. They had a fake. It was a CG trailer that looked like gameplay. I remember.
No, it was all Infinite.
No. There was a BioShock 1 where you looked through the eyes of the character and he gets drilled through the chest. At the end.
I remember. Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah, I remember.
So, but I mean, it did give an idea of how it was supposed to play, and I don't think they were saying this is a real gameplay trailer as opposed to Killzone 2. But anyway, bringing it back around. Yes. We got so off from where we were talking about Bayonetta.
But that's the thing, is like it all makes sense, it all connects, because
it's all connected.
Yes, yeah. With all this, it all connects. It's now we know that their entire slate for this year. We're hoping that the news we've heard from reliable sources with these remasters are the final pieces. The thing is that when we will hear it. Because Nintendo has no need for a Direct now. Because a direct usually is for them to like fill up the rest of at least half of their year. That's what they did with the first direct of this year, up until June, and kind of throwing a little ball to Xenoblade Chronicles. Then by themselves they were like, you know what, we're pushing Xenoblade Chronicles up from what we were saying. So with them, you just kind of have to see, like, unless suddenly in August they're like, yeah, we don't have anything here. Here's where we're dropping them. I doubt it. Nintendo just doesn't work like that. But we'll see. It's like they're acting on a level of silence that reminds me of 2020 a little bit. But the difference is that they have games, are the ones that interest us. So, but it's like their year has been filled, and now it just makes me curious. When will Breath of the Wild be? Like, by now we should have known. Like, had they done a direct in June, maybe that's when they would have given the name for the game to then come out the next year. That's kind of where we're like, what's the word that I'm thinking of? That's kind of where we deviated in the conversation there. Yeah. So I'll remain. That's the thing. Like, it's so funny that it's still the thing I want most from Nintendo are games from 2002. So what does that say about me?
It kind of shows a little about you and a lot about their game making quality, in a lot of ways, I think. Yeah.
I think Nintendo to me is just so associated with old stuff and nostalgia that I can't quite get into the new stuff as consistently. So, well, we'll see. Now, at least Nintendo fans, if you wanted to eat this year, you basically have meals for July, September, October, for 4 months at least. So yeah, that's a pretty good fall. So better than Xbox. So, number 2, Paul. On November last year, Konami went ahead and unlisted a bunch of old Metal Gear Solid games from digital storefronts, citing that some licenses they had to show real-life footage in the early titles had expired and needed to be renewed before they could sell the games again. Today, during the 35th anniversary of the Metal Gear series, Konami made note that they're getting ready to relist the digital versions of the games they pulled rather soon. Here is a list of the games they have removed from stores. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty HD Edition, the PS3, the Vita, and the Nvidia Shield version. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater HD Edition from PS3, Vita, and Xbox 360 and 3DS and Nvidia Shield, and Metal Gear Solid HD Edition that bundles them both together for PS3 and Vita, and Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance from GOG.com. Substance was kind of like the special edition of Sons of Liberty that included VR missions. No word on whether or not the relisting of this title will just go to the old stores or if they will also become available in more modern platforms. It's interesting that you can still buy the original Metal Gear Solid, the PS3 classic, the PS3, PS1 classic, but 2 and 3 got yanked, like, from every store possible for this. But if you own them, like, if you own them before, you can still download them. That's no problem. Right. But it makes to me it's just so weird. It's like, if they're gonna release them, wouldn't this be the time to put them on a modern system?
It would be wonderful, but I fear that I'm having... Well, okay, so it's in 2 parts, because my cynic around Konami says no, but then there's part of me that's been seeing Konami putting out collections of all of their best games
in modern consoles.
In modern consoles, as big collections, this would be one of those opportunities to do something like that, especially on the 35th anniversary of the Metal Gear series. I wish that they would just freaking put the first game out again. That'd be nice. Yeah. Even just Twin Snakes. I'll take anything. Because that's the only game in the series I've never played.
So now that the PS Plus Premium exists with PS1 games, I can see that's how they could put it.
I could see it.
Yeah. But it would still be the old version. Yeah.
Buy it, but yeah. I even found myself kind of wishing I could go back to them. It's just, as we've established, it's almost impractical to have all of those game systems to go back to them. So to be able to like centralize everything on one thing would be wonderful. Yeah, to me, still to this day, the PS3 is the one system where you can have all the games all together. I still can't believe it. And on the Xbox, you only have 2, 3, and Peace Walker.
Like no 4 and 5, but 4 and 1 are like just tied to PlayStation. So, and what's funny is that the Metal Gear Solid HD collection and also Metal Gear Solid 4 were on PS Now, and then when the revamp of the PS Plus happened and the PS Now went the way of the dodo, those games got yanked. So it makes me wonder if like that's how they're gonna reinsert them on PlayStation. Be like, you can stream them, but I want to believe, because a year ago around this time through BGC we learned that they're both remaking Metal Gear Solid 3 using a studio called Virtuous, and that they were planning on putting the old versions of the games kind of like available as collections. So I would hope, like in the perfect world, that this would be like the moment where they reemerge in digital storefronts, but now in modern digital storefronts. That would be great. That would be the hope, especially like no one told them to do Castlevania Advanced Collection.
Nope.
And they still did it, and they did it good. They're doing the TMNT games. So it's like
I'm genuinely impressed with how Konami is taking care of some of their housekeeping lately.
Exactly, lately it's like especially after being such a joke. So because it's so weird. It's like are you gonna go all the way to release these games on the PS3 store? Yeah. A store where you can't even like you can only buy stuff if you like add credit through a PS4 and then go into your PS3 to buy stuff. It's like it's a store that's just barely functional at this point. So why bother?
I hope that's just the starting point, and then eventually to get it listed on modern consoles would be where we really need things to be. But I mean, what was it? Because the Vita almost got shut down, and then they finally let it stay, I think.
Yeah, the Vita right now is also in the PS3 state of like you can't buy anything like natively there unless you add credit through like the web store in your wallet and then go inside your Vita to buy games. So it's like they're making it they're making it a hurdle to buy stuff there, but you can still buy digital stuff there. So it's like Konami is like, just finally just do the thing, put these things on PS, like it at the minimum put them on Xbox One and PS4, because everything's backwards compatible. It's like if you don't want to make the work of doing like a PS5 native version, it's like you don't need to. Backwards compatibility exists. Just put them in like a store that actually works right now, instead of having to put back all this stuff in old stuff. Like the only things that they would be relisted here that to me would make sense is the Xbox 360, like Metal Gear Solid HD Edition 2 and 3, because the Xbox One store still has a backwards compatibility, so you can purchase it there through BC. And then GOG and Nvidia Shield, because GOG is a store, and Nvidia Shield is something that you can kind of find and people use like in some places in the world. I think over there in like China or the other side of the world. So, it's thunder.
I heard the thunder through the microphone. That's impressive.
Yeah, so
the rain ended here and headed your way, I guess.
Yeah, we can't have rain both at the same time. That's not how the world works. So that's why I find fun is like it's few of the store, like the 3DS, the Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater 3DS is about to shut out the store next year.
That's what I was like the most shocked about, the fact that they're going through that for a store that's about to just not exist.
That's what I tell you. It's like I feel let's try to think logically. It's like I feel there's more to this. I feel this is gearing up, because it's like it wouldn't make sense.
Or the work required to relist something on old stores is that easy.
That would be insane.
I don't know what they're doing, but at a certain point when you're that big, your moves no longer follow general logic. Mm-hmm. That's like, I'm still trying to like let Cynic Paul get his thoughts out first before Optimus Paul shows up and says they're absolutely doing a collection of all of the games, and they're going to finally just combine everything in one glorious moment, including the first and the fourth game. Yeah,
this is again another part of why I hate that Sony has taken this long to get native PS3 backwards compatibility on the PS5, because if the PS3 was natively, the PS3 store was natively available on the PS5, I could see this working. Like, logically be like, yeah, these are games that work on PS5, and because they're on the PSN store, the PS3, that's how you can easily access them on PS5. Now the only thing that I can see them happening is just put them back into streaming again, after they were yanked out from PS Now. So yeah, it's like it frustrates me because Metal Gear is such a franchise that's near and dear to my heart, and I wish there was more, like, for the entire series to be more easily available for modern gamers to really experience it, not in this like piecemeal approach where the first one that you can play on Xbox is 2. So it's like, man, it's so frustrating.
There's more games available where you don't actually play as Snake than there are where
right?
you can actually play as
the 2 Solid Snake games are not available outside of PlayStation 1 and 4.
the main character of the whole series.
Yeah.
And you play as Raiden
and Big Boss
and his dad.
Yeah. And Solid Snake for like the tutorial.
And yeah, gosh, that still frustrates me sometimes.
Oh well. I'll remain
Anyway.
optimistic. I'll remain optimistic, Paul.
I'm really hoping so.
Number 3, second to last story. Square Enix says Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a PS5 exclusive because they're making full use of the console's SSD. During an interview with Japanese publication Gamer, Rebirth producer Kitase claimed that there were several factors involved in the decision not to release the game for PS4. He says, "It's exclusive to PlayStation 5 because of the graphical quality, of course, as well as SSD access speed," he said, translated by Gamatsu. "Since the adventure unfolds in a vast world after the escape from Midgar, loading stress is an extreme bottleneck. We felt we needed the specifications of PlayStation 5 to overcome that and travel the world comfortably." The news comes amidst the complete absence of Final Fantasy VII Remake on Xbox platforms, which, especially in modern times, they also have an SSD, which originally was said would be coming a year after the original release of the PS4 version in 2020. We're in 2022, FYI. Also, Kitase and Nomura revealed the original plan was for the remake project to be released in 2 parts, before they decided 3 parts would actually be the proper amount of time to tell this story.
Well, I did hear about this, actually.
Yes. So,
what were your thoughts?
So it's like, this is a hashtag no shit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's like, it would make sense why it wouldn't come to PS4 this time, especially now. Think about a remake, Paul. How many times you had to walk through narrow corridors and like at times as you move through our world to load in assets?
Very often, it seems.
Yeah.
And even then, sometimes it would just be like 2D assets in a skybox that are really far away.
And some of them wouldn't even render in the PS4 version. Remember, they didn't have text.
Which is crazy, just how detailed everything that was on screen must have been for that to still be an issue.
Yeah, but then they fixed it on Intergrade, which, by the way, in the 19th, FYI people, if you have PlayStation Extra, Final Fantasy VII Intergrade and the Yuffie DLC, gonna be available for you in the extra PS Plus tier.
Oh, that's cool. The last part of that is what pricked my ears up, because I was watching this guy that's really into Final Fantasy VII, and he was detailing the whole thought of like originally it was just 2 parts, and how everybody was talking about how they assumed it would be 3 games already because of the 3 discs.
Yeah, for the 3 discs.
But he reminded everyone that the main game was really only on the first 2. The third one, because disc 2 was a lot of CG cutscenes, was why most of the game was on that. And once you got beyond that, the third disc was mostly dungeons and like final parts of the game, but most of it was on the first 2. So he was explaining how like it wasn't ever really demanding to be in 3 parts, even though everyone assumes 1 disc for each beat of the story, even though it doesn't actually line up with that. So they would actually have to fill a lot of stuff to make a third game.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, it's like the first disc doesn't end just with you escaping Midgar. You play more beyond that.
Correct. There's like segments before you actually get access to the full world that lets you do it. I don't remember where the drop actually happens, because there's the whole flashback segments in the second part of the game. Lots of cutscenes, a lot of stuff going on in that.
Trust me, a week or 2 ago, I started playing Final Fantasy VII Original on Switch, and I was enjoying it a little bit because it's like I'm playing it on handheld. It makes sense here. The turn
it does.
So a lot of times reading a bunch of text there. So.
A lot of text, a lot of exposition, a lot of weird mini games, especially in that middle section where I just kind of like dissociated in the middle of that game where I was like, all right, let's just keep going. Like a lot of this, it felt like side segments to like a fantasy book series where when you looked back on it, you're like, none of this had to be here. This is weird. So I mean, maybe that's sacrilege, but there's a lot of parts in that middle section of Final Fantasy VII that just did not feel needed. But
I've heard otherwise, but
yeah, I know a lot of people are going to defend that, but there are also maybe some purists that need to understand that certain parts can be cut out of games. Anyway,
I can't wait for I absolutely cannot wait for Rebirth, especially how good Remake was. I will say if it's funny though that them specifically mentioned the SSD. I feel that this. Remember how we were hearing that the PS5 SSD was actually stronger than the one used in the Xbox Series X and S?
Or at least they were using it better. But yeah.
No, it's like, objectively speaking, just from raw data, the PS5 SSD has more than the Xbox ones. And would this be kind of like a reason why it wouldn't show up on Xbox? But I can imagine it showing up on Xbox eventually, kind of like tweaked for it to work on the SSDs that are inside those machines. So
I mean, I don't know why it hasn't shown up on Xbox platforms already, because I feel like the SSDs
are not needed for Remake.
So whatever that problem is going to be some kind of separate problem that I think they need to figure out before Rebirth even thinks about considering getting over to Xbox.
Yeah.
Because once again, it would be the Metal Gear Solid problem where it's like, hey, look, Rebirth is on here, but Remake isn't. And you're like, what the heck is going to be happening?
They're already like that. They're getting Crisis Core, but they're not getting Remake.
Right. But then also 7 Remake is on PC. So theoretically, it should be capable of running on any Xbox. It's just there's something else going on that's stopping them.
It's definitely a contract thing. I think Sony must have like extended the thing to be like, the entirety of the Final Fantasy VII Remake project, which is not going to be the 3 parts, has to come here first. So,
and then all of it eventually makes it.
It's going to be the Persona thing. Like now Persona, it's coming to Xbox, so bad.
It only took them, 20-something years for some of the old games?
Yeah. But the Zeitgeist, now the Zeitgeist is going to be on PlayStation first, which...
Definitely.
PlayStation and Final Fantasy have always been kind of like neck to neck. Anyway, so... It was only during Final Fantasy 13 and 15 where it was like a multi-platform, and like guess what? Those were not the best received games. So
not at all. Yeah. But
final story, Paul. This is a little bit of a long one, but it's an interesting one. Sony announced this past Monday it has completed the acquisition of new Canadian studio Haven, led by Jade Raymond, famously known as producer of the early Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs entries. Per BGC, so just as a context, we heard earlier this year that they're acquiring them. They finally sealed it. Like they finally acquired it.
Okay.
Because when you say you're buying someone, you have to go through the checks and antitrust before that's approved. Yeah. It's been approved. So now Haven, the studio that was opened last year and had no game, was like making a game that was going to be for PlayStation, is officially a PlayStation studio. Per BGC, to coincide with the completion of the deal, Raymond provided GamesIndustry.biz with an update on the studio, which is making an original AAA multiplayer title for PS5. Sony previously described the game as a new live service experience for PlayStation built upon a systemic and evolving world focused on delivering freedom, thrill, and playfulness.
It sounds like a Mark Zuckerberg quote. Anyway.
Yeah. While Raymond didn't reveal much more about the game in the new GamesIndustry.biz interview, she said Haven's workforce has grown from around 50 employees last October to over 100. She said the company is investing heavily in R&D and long-term cloud innovation because we really believe it's going to be a game changer in terms of how games are made. That's what she said. 21 engineers have recently joined the studio to focus on cloud innovation, and Haven has hired Jalal El Mansouri, who was the technical architect on Ubisoft's Rainbow Six Siege, as principal architect for the studio and also its head of R&D. Raymond also teased an exciting collaboration with PS5 architect Mark Cerny, who she said is having a big impact on the evolution of the studio. So Mark Cerny is one of the main reasons we're investing so much in R&D and in this very senior engineering team, she said. He's not just tied to cloud, but also some forward-thinking R&D. I'm not able to say too much now, but that's obviously one of the other things that's been a big attractor and is exciting to our team with PlayStation.
Okay, so
Mark Cerny's the dude that gave us the big ASMR talk and March 17, the guy that I showed you the
the really
picture.
long
Yeah.
specifics of the PS5, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that
Okay.
dude that has like that very soothing voice, and
Yeah,
also when I show you to look at pictures of him when in the PS4 reveal of 2013, that he looked like he hadn't been sleeping a lot.
that's right. Okay, so that
So
was
that's
him.
the guy. So that's the guy that is working directly now with the studio.
That's such a weird detail. The architect of the PS5 dealing with such tech-based stuff is going to be heading parts of this R&D development.
I think they're doing something that Mark Cerny is like so interested to kind of like then make it like a base thing for whatever they do moving forward.
This feels like something that they're really trying to shake up the details of how games can be made. Where, you know, like developers, they put out the dev kits and all that stuff, and people start kind of messing with it, and then it takes somebody who was like an architect on how it was built to be like, hey, look at how we can do this. Look at this thing that I know that you might not have noticed yet. So that part has me curious. The fact that it was the technical architect of Siege, which, I mean, say what you will, that is a
Siege
very
is good.
well-made game.
Yeah, Siege is good.
And it went through a renaissance of several years, more than most games could ever hope to have. And still running with a good amount of people playing it.
30 million players, as
kind
last
of
reported.
Really gone off the rails in some ways, but that's another discussion. And then the fact that they're really trying to work on cloud-based work, which at least we've established that that's not necessarily a bad thing by itself, because I mean, Hideo Kojima sees
potential in that thing. That's why they're doing the Xbox thing.
So, I mean, it sounds like it's got a lot of trigger words that line up the right way. I don't know what's about it is like. This feels like it was written by an AI that wants to use buzzwords for things. But then also there's a part of me that's like, this could be really interesting. I'm kind of curious.
So this one's interesting because it's the other acquisition that Sony did this year. Remember, Bungie was the other one. And that's still kind of like in the approval process. That's still not official. This one was, remember what this PlayStation MO was for acquisitions? They would work with a studio for on a second party capacity for them to do an exclusive for PlayStation. Sometimes they would it would be only you would only need one really good game to be acquired, or it could be like a string of 2 or 3 projects together before then Sony's like, let's get married. With the Bungie acquisition was like, that was the first one that broke protocol, because it's like PlayStation and Bungie weren't really courting each other that way. It's like the only way that they had a connection was when Activision had the deal with PlayStation, so that Destiny could do exclusive stuff to Sony. But it's not like they were having like a tight relationship like Bungie was having with Microsoft. But they saw the opportunity to like court them, to be like, hey, we know you do live service stuff. Can we purchase you so you can help us with teaching us how to do live services, since you have one of the few live service games that is like 8 years running and it's been running it successfully. You know the pros and cons, and you'll retain autonomy, so you're not going to be like a true PlayStation studio. You're just going to be part of Sony Corp, and you'll get to do movies with us. And then they were like, yeah, heck yeah, let's sign. Then Haven was like, this was a studio that was formed literally 6 weeks after Jade Raymond left Stadia, when Stadia was like, oh yeah, we're no longer doing we're no longer doing first party stuff for our things. So, and Jade Raymond was brought in to create first party content for Stadia. So then she was like, so then she was like,
where the connection is.
Yeah. So F off. I'm like, if you're not doing first party, so what am I here for? I'm out. And then she made that studio Haven, and then PlayStation was like, okay, well, here's what's ironic. It's like Sony was doing the traditional, say, yeah, we'll fund your project, but we don't own you. I feel this was one of the caution, kind of like the caution to the wind of like when Microsoft bought Activision. Then they were like, you know what? Usually our MO is that we're gonna have to do the first project together, see how it goes, and then we buy you. Then they immediately were like, screw that, we buying you now. We put in the ring now, without us knowing what the game is. But then I also think maybe what they've seen in the prototype is so impressive that they were still willing to like jump the hoops of what they usually would do and how they would acquire something first. It makes me wonder,
Yeah.
Is the game that like are they doing something really that impressive?
Whatever it is made them decide to buy ownership of the entire company sooner than let the world see it first.
Mm-hmm.
So that by itself says something.
And to me, like the biggest, if you have Mark Cerny interested in what you're doing, that he's working directly with you.
Yeah. I think I'm swinging back into the group of like, even though it sounds like a lot of buzzwords, whatever it is, if money is changing hands that severely for something that nobody has seen,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of maybe a green flag in one rare case, to keep our minds open and eyes on.
Well, like for example, just to give an idea, Mark Cerny worked with Naughty Dog very close in something they call the ICE team, ICE, which is like it was like the intelligence for the common engine, I think is what it's called. I don't remember, but I know it's a common engine thing, and they worked together in Naughty Dog to find a way to make PS3 development like work.
Oh, this was that.
This was that guy. Yeah, this was Mark Cerny, and then Mark Cerny worked with Insomniac to test the SSD.
Okay.
With what they did with Spider-Man, because when they were like when they were showing the PS5 to investors early in like 2019, the game they used was Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So,
well, I remember now because that was when they were doing the whole, all right, let's fast travel, and it was like 1.5 seconds or something.
Exactly, and look at the detail of the stream of the already streamed assets in the SSD versus the other one. So Mark Cerny not only develops the console, he like joins in into specific tech to do something that could then work for whatever.
On the literally the engineering side of a game, rather than like an art or an interest in, hey, I want to make this cool story. It's like, I want to do this awesome thing that's going to change everything.
And with Sony saying that they're focused on releasing 10 live services before like 2025, 2026, remember? Because
at least this might put one of them off that list.
Yes, this is definitely one. I feel now this is like them, like with the like I can see now both the Bungie acquisition and this acquisition having the goal of like, we're pivoting to wanting to put out live service stuff, but we gotta have the tech and the know-how. So,
which I can at least respect that much, and a live service can work. In rare examples, as long as greed doesn't overtake steadiness and consistency.
Yeah.
I mean, look at For Honor and Siege and all of these other things. I mean, those are two Ubisoft examples.
Yes,
but,
somehow like
Apex Legends.
Yes, Apex was like almost got sunk by greed.
Gosh, I can't
for a little
believe
bit
that one actually succeeded, but here we are. It goes to show that when you make the mechanics of the shooting itself feel really good.
The thing is that Apex didn't launch greedy. The greedy happened throughout the year.
It definitely did. And at least like you can still technically play the game completely. It's just I still don't agree with the way their whole DLC character system works. Like I can play For Honor and get enough currency in like an afternoon to buy one character, I think. But Apex is like,
it's way harder, way harsher.
I can play for a month and maybe get enough for one character. So yeah, that's just one example. But I feel like live service can work. It's just everyone wants to jump the shark and get to that point of making billions of dollars with updates and crossovers, but you need to make it to that point.
And not only that, it's like live service has become like synonymous of a studio starting a live service game and not being well prepared to give you the content that you need to like keep the player hooked and engaged. Look at Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite, prime example of what happened to that free-to-play multiplayer right now, that they didn't have the when they launched that multiplayer early, that gave a sign of confidence. Like, they're so confident in the quality of this multiplayer and they must have the content ready to push this thing out a month earlier.
I remember we were talking and theorizing about all that, and we were like, gosh, if they're doing this now, then they're like really sure that everyone's gonna buy the rest of the game when it comes out. It technically worked.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, the fundamental game that is Halo Infinite is awesome and it works. Gameplay. And the thing is that it being promoted as a live service, having less content than a traditional Halo game, and taking so long to put out that content, that's an example of you saying you want to be a live service and you're not ready. to put out the content. Like, say whatever you will about Destiny 2, especially because I feel like I've hit a certain malaise with the seasonal content where eventually I just burn out and I don't want to do anything for a little while. They have found a cadence that no matter what, every week there's at least something new. But they worked so hard to eventually get there, and they didn't get there at the beginning. It took a while. So that's I feel like the biggest pitfall. Not only the greed, because usually like a live service is definitely born out of a greed to try to make as much money as possible because you keep people hooked in the long term. But live service live and die by how long can you keep providing meaningful content at a steady pace that someone wants to keep you, that someone wants to stay in with you, like for a long while. It's kind of like why Microsoft is pushing a Game Pass and why they're also so bought into the live service, because it's net benefit for them. If you put your live services on Game Pass, it means you'll remain subscribed because they're going to be hooking you for the long term. That's kind of like the goal. But if you don't have the content, you're just going to fail. I feel Sony, as they're getting into this into this realm, they already suffered the nightmare that was Gran Turismo 7 getting its economy completely wrong. That's a big first hurdle.
Yeah.
That Sony wrote straight ahead with that and completely damaged the cachet of a storied series like Gran Turismo in its early side. Right now it works well, but again, it's the first impressions matter. So
I mean, we go back to one of the most famous ones with Battlefront 2, and like even though they fixed it and it's
such a great game now,
fantastic game, nobody's going to give it a shot anymore because of how popular that previous statement at release was.
Yeah, the loot
and
box,
that hurts my soul.
Exactly. It's like
you look back at that game now and like the stuff they added for free, all the details, the cool game modes, all the characters, and you're like, whoa, this is actually freaking awesome.
The Clone Wars that came out after, like all the Clone Wars content is like, it's so unfortunate. And like, look at No Man's Sky also. There are so many people that are still holding the grudge of how that game launched. Destiny, I mean, you show me the chat.
Still gonna hate on that, yeah.
Exactly. Even though it's like right now the best live service, like technically one of the best live services that exist right now. It's like first impressions matter. Some people just don't let go of the first impression. I feel it's kind of bad that sometimes like you don't want to see something evolve, but so many people are worried that if the first impression is bad, how do you get them back?
Yeah. And sometimes it's just you can't.
So
for a lot of people.
So right now what Sony is doing right now, this is the litmus test. They got the studio that went through the highs and lows twice in Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. So they know what to do and they know not what to do. Haven is building a network of development that should potentially, like based on some of the things that are mentioned here, could work for live services. If even with this, whatever Sony puts out as live service sucks, then it's proof as clear as day that that doing a game as a live service completely sucks. It's not. It's something always prone to initial disappointment and it being initially terrible. And I don't understand why developers still are so insistent at wanting to pursue that. So that I think will be the biggest tell for Sony, especially as they're pursuing this. They seem to know that they need to get it right, and they're getting the tools to try to get it right. You don't get bigger than another Bungie. If you still, even with that, still doesn't work, that should be as clear as day. Everyone should know. Live service is a scam. Just don't. Do a traditional game. And adjust expectations accordingly. And let go of greed.
Live service is just... It's the same... absolute power corrupts absolutely phrase where it's like it's powerful, but it's too powerful for any one company to handle, no matter what it is. It's either your company's too small to handle it or you're way too big. And I feel no company is ever really prepared about how much you need to work to get a live service going. It's like, to me, one of the ones that suffered that greatly was Avengers. I mean, you look at all of them, I'd say millions, but like thousands or hundreds at least that tried to make battle royales in the wake of that and then just couldn't keep up with it. I still am lamenting the death of Spellbreak because
that found its unique niche.
It's all like some of them were copy and paste and some of them were truly unique and interesting, and the company just could not keep up with either the servers, the demand for content, or whatever it is, and then they die in the crib. And then
I feel
world
like
moves
for
on.
forever, let's just blame Fortnite. Fortnite set an impossible standard.
Yeah.
And that even for them, they realized it wasn't unsustainable, and they had to like slow down.
And completely change the way their game works. Even now, fully taking building completely out of the game, which was one of the biggest things that made them unique initially. Oh man,
and no
I
one
still remember.
And no one, I don't see Fortnite being talked about much.
Oh
Obviously,
no, it's very big still.
It's still big, but like the conversation is not as big as it used to be. It's like eventually, like people just move on. Like at least
I think
like the
it's
side
mostly
guys.
just because they have infinite money and they keep doing crossovers with stuff.
That's
so
the only time you hear them. That's like Indiana Jones right now. So,
right.
but other than that, it's like, oh yeah, they're doing another live event. I'm like, oh okay, cool. It's like,
I guess it depends because we're not into a lot of the virtual concerts, but the people that are like freaking losing it. Like they'll still talk about the Travis Scott stuff.
that was still awesome. Like what they did with that.
And what's capable in that situation.
The Marshmallow concert, I remember also.
I think it just depends because we're a little further outside of that whole circle, but within it, I think it's still built enough. So like,
but it's also no longer topping it's not always topping the Twitch charts anymore.
Really?
And many of the big content creators have moved on to other stuff like Tarkov. So that's kind of what I tell you, is that eventually these games, like, they have their time in the limelight and then people get bored and then they move on. So
yeah, well, maybe it's ripe for the king to be toppled into something else, whether it's a different game in the style or a different genre entirely.
Yeah, I just hope that as all of this is still happening, we keep proving that single player stuff can still be something that can thrive, can still be something that
I think we finally gotten to that point where single players carved its niche back out, because at first everyone was like, single player's dead, the whole EA thing, the whole Jedi Fallen Order process, where like we've gone through that song and dance, and I think people have realized, okay, no, we can make a lot of money out of good single player content. I mean,
no, exactly. So and that's what that's kind of what I mean. It's like we're at that point where single player stuff has shown itself to be viable. I just hope that we reach a point where developers don't have to kill themselves in 5-6 year dev cycles to get us one of those games. And at a like, kind of like the big long thread that I showed you, that is like we've reached the point where the cadence of single player games is like slowed down to such a trickle that they get so expensive also, because the expectations of gamers of like, give me that 4K, give me this 120 frames per second, give me all the like next gen bells and whistles, creates that purpose and that kind of like pressure, and I feel like we need to get to a point where good quality single player stuff doesn't need to take that long, because I feel that's why so many devs still want to do like live service, because it's kind of like the less work for more profit kind of mentality. And because to me it's still crazy. Uncharted 1 2007, Uncharted 2 2009, Uncharted 3 2011, Last of Us 2013, all from the same studio, all 2 years. Like it's crazy. And the quality of those at the times, and even now in certain aspects, it's like we're no longer in that era. That's why like so many people are like, yes, like it's the $200 million game is like not gonna be sustainable for much longer. But then also gamers have to accept is like either you want the quality, or if you want more games sooner and still of relatively good quality, understand not everything has to be an 80 to 100 hour game.
Yeah. And not everything has to interact with your character perfectly. You can have little lily pads that phase through your character, or glass that doesn't break in certain ways.
Or my favorite from Uncharted 4, like chest hair that moves. Like
it's like, all right, guys, you gotta rein it back a little bit.
Red Dead Redemption 2, the horse testicles.
Exactly. That. It's like you gotta pick and choose your battles at times, guys.
Yeah.
But hopefully,
look at Insomniac. Great looking games.
Yeah.
So, and get
also
them and quick and coming out quick.
Becoming the biggest gaming company lately.
Of having so many devs
with
that
like
can
what,
sustain
10,000.
That was a joke. That was just
Was it really?
Yeah,
Okay,
that was just a joke by Jason Schreier.
Oh,
that it was
gosh.
like, because it feels like that. It's like, how do you have all these devs? Like, how do you have all these games out so quickly and so many development? Because you're staffed up a lot. They just know they have staffed up a lot. You just don't know how many devs are in there.
Got it.
So, well, Paul, that concludes the news section of our show. And like I promised last week, I wanted to leave the end of the show just to kind of tell us about the games that are coming out the next week from when we post an episode. So these are the game releases that are coming from July 18th to July 22nd. So As Dusk Falls releases an Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC on July 19th. This is the choice-based weird game that was announced at E3. Endling Extinction is Forever. This is like a proto side-scroller indie that it's about like the from what I was watching the trailer about it was about like climate change and like the loss of fauna, and you're like playing as a fox and its cubs.
Yeah.
That's coming out July 19th. PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Fallen Angel. This is a Switch and PC action RPG. You should look into this one, Paul. It's like a top-down DMC style almost, like with an interesting 2D art style. That also comes out on July 19th. Into the Breach. This is a game that was big. I think it was in 2018, 2019. The tactical game that's coming out to iOS and Android, also July 19th. Stray. Coming to PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC, the 3D platformer Starting Cats by Annapurna. That's on July 19th. And also to note, if you have a PlayStation Plus Extra or Premium, it launches there, day and date. So kind of like a Game Pass day one. Bright Memory Infinite. This was the game that looked like Titanfall, made by like a Chinese developer.
Oh yeah.
This is coming out on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and Switch on July 21st. Weird.
Huh.
And Live Alive. This is the old school RPG that was announced at one of the Nintendo Directs. I think the one last year, the one earlier this year. Everyone lost their freaking minds about it because it's like a classic that apparently never made it here locally to the US. That's coming out on Switch on July 22nd. Paul, from all of these games, what are you interested in? I'm interested in Stray.
I was Googling them very quickly as I went. Fallen Angel seemed interesting. Into the Breach was really cool. I wish it wasn't just on mobile.
That's the thing. Into the Breach is on consoles. This is just the iOS and Android.
Oh, shoot. Okay, cool. So I'm going to look that up and see what that's about. And then Live Alive, I want to look up more details about it.
Just before, let me just make sure that it's also on console. Oh no, yeah, never mind. It's like it was only on PC. Into the Breach.
So it's PC and now it's going to mobile. Okay.
But PS5, PS4 ports in the realm of possibility, according to Push Square, as said in June 27 of this year.
Got it.
Hey, at least iOS is an easier way to like play a tactical game like that. Bright Memory Infinite. I liked how it looked because it was like, wait, this looks like Titanfall almost. And what's weird is that it wasn't well received when it came out on PC late last year. So I'm in that.
I mean, if you said like a couple of those buzzwords that immediately made me lose interest in it, where you were like, "Oh yeah, it was really popular overseas." So you said it was a Chinese developer, or did
no, it's a Japanese RPG, old school RPG, Live Alive. Yeah.
No, not Live Alive, Bright Memory.
Yeah, but I was mentioning that Live Alive was an old school RPG that never made it here officially.
Right. But you were talking about the one that didn't get received well.
That's Bright Memory Infinite.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So that's what I was like, oh yeah, that sounds about right, because it looks cool, awesome first-person shooter, and then everyone kind of hates it when it comes out to the rest of the world, but for whatever reason is really popular in the Asian community.
Yeah, I don't know if it's super popular, but I think that's one of the Game Pass games. So I'm really curious about that, because As Dusk Falls is another Game Pass game. That's the game that looked like a Quantic Dream game that looked like an FMB thing that was like moving in still images, and you could play that with 8 players and make decisions all together or something like that. So
that's Dusk Falls. Okay, I have no interest in this, honestly.
Yeah,
it sounds cool, and then you're like, I'm not gonna deal with this. It's like an art house video game, if you wanted to call it that.
And that's why Game Pass is beautiful.
Yep, because you can sit in and try it and then be
Mhm.
like, hey, I didn't spend any money on this.
Mhm.
Good
Only in the
stuff.
subscription. So yeah, that's all for like next week. Stray, I'm interested to hear reviews for, because that's gonna be available for PS Plus Extra.
Hmm.
So I hope it's good, because then it's like it starts paving the way for these kinds of games to release in day and date. So it's not so that the PlayStation Plus can have the Game Pass benefit of like smaller games that some people may not buy. Maybe they get to try them if they're part of a subscription. So
Like to try it if I can, but
I
they
love
gotta
it. There's
convince me to really be worth that extra money for
the thing is
PlayStation
that,
Extra.
the thing is that, do you pay yearly for PlayStation Plus, or you pay month to month?
I try to pay yearly to
Okay.
save the money.
Yeah, so but because obviously if you're paying month to month for PS Plus was $10, and for extra it's like 15.
I know,
And
but that really adds up after a while.
exactly. And extra is 100 for a year.
Yeah,
And
which as opposed to 60 for a year. So
exactly,
it's
so
like,
for an extra 40. And obviously this
it
would be
depends on where the priorities are, because it sounds like it could be easily doable, but then after a while you're like, man, that 40 could be grocery money right now.
I
Or
feel
gas money with how expensive that is.
yeah, as by itself this game's gonna cost like $30. So
Okay,
it being on extra, it's like you're saving money there in a way.
true.
So I feel this is if it feels different if you were like to do month to month, because it could be like 1 month you spend 15 instead of 10.
Hmm.
So
It sounds like it would be totally fine, especially with how often I buy indies. But the problem is, it's like Game Pass, you could justify it, but with PlayStation, they just need to have more options for me to justify it. So that'll be like, I'll revisit it when there's like a lot more games on
Yeah,
it, and then maybe it'll be worth
so
it.
for you it would be like getting this and Yuffie together, because Integrate is like
Yeah.
it's been put into the service in the same day. So
True.
I think what sucks, especially for us being on the PlayStation side of this, is most of these games we bought. Like a lot of the games that are being put in the service, like we have
Yeah.
bought, because that's how we were wired while being in that ecosystem. But as long as we keep hearing, yeah, these indies are coming day one. I think
If I could start to trust that it might show up there eventually, then maybe I'll stop buying things as often.
now I have to be waiting, because it's like, if Stray's a big one. This was in the showcases.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, other than that, it's like all the things of here that are on Game Pass, I'm gonna try. Fallen Angel, I need to hear reviews. It looks cool, but it's
Yeah.
just on Switch. So
I think it's one of those things where I'll just have to look and see some of these, but I feel like my time gets taken up with all of the wonderful live service games that have been going on lately, especially with next week.
yeah, I tell
being
you,
Solstice for
yeah,
Destiny.
but I need to look to see if the armor glows for that, because other than that, I'm not gonna be playing Destiny until the next season. I'm burnt out.
Yeah.
I'm literally burnt out on Destiny right now.
I mean, you played those dungeons and those raids so often that I was like, that I can't do any of that nonsense.
Yeah, because
So
you're
now I'm
level
like-
55 in your season pass, and I'm level 103 already.
Yeah.
So.
So you burn through a lot of that. I knew I was gonna have to wait for a bit, and now is the time for it, because
Hey, the beauty is that this season doesn't expire until the next expansion, so
yeah, which is
that was
like
on me.
50 days or something from now.
No,
So
no
I'm-
more like whenever the next expansion shows up, like Lightfall.
Really? I thought
Seasons stay for an entire year until the next expansion, and then everything is cleared.
oh, so even though the seasons change, you still get credit for all the old seasons?
You get the weapons, you get the armor, you can still get them if you're in another season. It's just the season pass that has to be concluded before the season.
Oh yeah.
concludes. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, like the season pass itself and the items in it. But yeah, you're right, because you can still go back and do all the previous season's content, because there's like legacy processes, like the spear that was from the previous one and all
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's ways to go back through it, I'm sure. I gotta just be pacing myself the right way. But with Solstice being something I missed barely last time, I'm gonna go through
No, you
it this
didn't miss
time
merely.
just
You missed completely last time. That's
I
when
mean,
you took a break.
I missed it just barely because that was like I came back a couple weeks after it ended or something, and that was when I was like, all right, cool, let's see what that's about. Hey, these people have really cool armor. When did that happen?
No, it was me that had the cool armor. They were like, when
Yeah.
you get this, like the solstice thing that just happened.
Yeah, and that was very sad for me. So I might at least pick up some of that with the bright dust I'm picking up from the season pass, and then as soon as I decide to see that content drop for me, I'm out.
I may be a bearer of bad news, but I don't think you'll be able to buy it with red dust.
I might.
It's silver, yeah.
Maybe that'll be my one splurge for anything that I think is actually cool looking.
I did that with a few armor for my warlock.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I barely buy cosmetics. I'm doing it here, but well, Paul, those are the games I'm releasing next week. So, and with that, the show concludes. Where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. I've been posting gameplay segments of me breaking games lately and posting memes, but every once in a while I will post the art that I've been working on. I think I actually posted a GIF of a teaser for the latest project that I've been working on, which was an animated pixel art light sword.
Oh, nice.
And that was really fun to do, and it was like a little looping GIF of it activating. So like there's a piece of it that kind of opens like a lightsaber, like a Kylo Ren style lightsaber, and then this huge blue blade opens up. It was really cool. So check that out if you want to.
And also follow him to see his evolving thoughts about being part of a D&D group that failed him for his second
totally
session.
forgot to mention that because I started a D&D session for the first time ever. I've never played D&D before, and immediately we had trouble scheduling. So we're working on that.
So
we're gonna continue.
You felt a certain way, right?
I felt very frustrated because they were immediately like, all right, we're going to do a monthly thing. And then they're like, hey, you want to do this more often? I was like, I'm a busy adult, guys. I don't know if I can, but let me see if I can. And then I go through a lot of hoops, find out, yes, I in fact can. And then like one person is unavailable for the whole next set of weeks. So we have to wait till not only a month, but like a little bit longer than a month because the host himself was like, oh yeah, so I have something happening because it's my parents' anniversary. I was like, and they also live an hour away. So it's like, I can't just choose to like hop over for 10 minutes.
It's like trying to schedule a Destiny raid in our old times.
Yeah. When there's not like a set of 100 people you can choose from to do your raid with. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that. And it sucks because I got really into the concept and rolling the dice, the neuron activation of like numbers. Yes, this is fun. And then they're like, yeah, so you just can't do this for a month at least.
That would suck.
So it kind of makes me want to like on the side find other friends that are into it and be like, hey, you want to do like a one-shot D&D campaign? You
could do the online one, like our buddy from our clan Firestorm. He's trying to like schedule like Discord led D&D sessions. So
it's a cool concept, but the oftenness of it I think would mess me up because it's already like having to go to my wife constantly to be like, hey baby, can I set aside 7 to 8 hours to go do this thing instead of responsibilities? And it's kind of hard to justify.
You make me feel happy still to not be married. So
it's a bit of a challenge to navigate, especially since I didn't do that before I was married, so I don't have any like precedence of how to set it up. But at least the gaming side of it I was able to set aside beforehand, and now that's easily fit into my schedule. It just depends on what you do beforehand.
So follow him at Dork of Art, and then you can follow me at _Dorsegovia on Twitter, Alejandro Segovia 93 on Instagram, and some of my written content at thecriticalcorner.com. Eventually, I'll write something there new. I have to find what to write. So, Paul, it's always a pleasure to do this show with you, and summer's almost, we're getting close to halfway done through July, which is insane, and I can't wait to reach August, and whenever we're in the release season again, because I'm feeling a little antsy, I tell you. So
that's why I had so many games on my playlist, because I'm just bouncing around until I find something that sticks with me.
Oh yeah, but backlog time feels nice. But until next time, people, if you enjoyed the show, give us a like, subscribe, share it, tell us what we did right, what we did wrong, and we'll love to hear from you eventually. Their comments are always available there. And stay safe. If you're in rains, just don't get too wet. And stay healthy. And remember,
Press X
to play.
Good night, everybody.
Hasta luego.